All right, at this time, we will call to order the City of Kenai Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for November 10th, 2021. Will you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if I could, before we start, I just wanted to take a minute, and I'm sure most of you know that fellow commissioner, airport commissioner, Derek Lichlighter passed away on Sunday on a plane crash. And if we could just take a moment of silence in his memory, please. Okay, if we could have the roll call, please.
Chair Tweet,
Here.
Commissioner Halstead,
Here.
Commissioner Woodard. Oh, Commissioner Woodard is there on Zoom. Commissioner Greenberg,
Here.
Commissioner Douthat is absent. Commissioner Springer,
Here.
Vice Chair Fikes. Here. You have a quorum.
All right, and before we approve the agenda, I'm just going to make note that the minutes are correct, but the date on the minutes needs to be corrected to say October 27th, 2021. So if we can incorporate that with, in addition to the laydown items when we approve the agenda, I would look for a motion to approve.
Through the
Vice Chair Fikes.
Through the chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda to include the October 27th.
And the laydown.
In the laydown, sorry.
All right.
Second.
And the laydown is in regards to Resolution PZ 2021-21 and PZ 2021-40, a couple of public comments. All right, Commissioner Douthat has arrived, so we'll make note of that. And move on to the consent agenda. A4, wishes of the Commission. Vice Chair Fikes.
Thank you, Chairman Twait. I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any objections? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. Item C, scheduled public comment. We have none. Item D, unscheduled public comment. Anyone from the public wishing to speak to an item not on tonight's agenda?
If there is anyone on Zoom that wants to speak in unscheduled public comment, you can unmute or press *6.
Doesn't appear to be, so we will move on. Item E, consideration of plats. We have none. Takes us to item F, public hearings. First one tonight is F1, Resolution PZ 2021-21 and PZ 2021-40. An application for conditional use permits for a dormitory and bed and breakfast for the property described as Lot 1, Block 7, Inlet View Subdivision. First revision located at 702 Lawton Drive, Kenai 99611. Application submitted by Kathleen Martin, P.O. Box 521, Cooper Landing. And at this time, the applicant can give a presentation. We're doing it a little different than what we used to. So I guess, well, if you want to come forward, state your name and address for the record, and then during the public testimony part again, if you need to come up and clarify anything, you can. But if you want to just start off with what the intent of what you're doing is.
All right, is this mic on? Yes, it is. Okay. My name's Ed Martin. I'm the son of the owners, and I speak on their behalf. Basically, the purpose of this, I guess, is I run a driving academy in Soldotna and Sterling, and our intent was to use this property as a dormitory for those students. It seemed to fit the bill, I guess. There's plenty of space, there's plenty of facilities in this building. The parking was a bit of an issue, so we got I guess a lease from the Kenai Peninsula Borough for the adjacent property. And, you know, did a little bit of improvements there, small gravel pad. As there were on the back side of this property, there was a couple of existing parking spots and a small driveway on the back of the lot, which probably wouldn't be used as much if we went ahead, got the permit for the adjacent property, going off of Lawton Drive. So we probably put a driveway in there. I imagine there needs to be a little bit of construction done, although it's a little late in the year for putting in driveways now, but you know, hopefully first thing in spring. So you know, traffic would be directed towards that to ease anything. I mean, the existing driveway in the back, as I see in some of the letters here, has become a little bit of contention. Although I have not been approached by any of the neighbors about that, but I'm definitely willing to mitigate that. I guess the back driveway would only be really necessary for personal use and probably snow plowing. But other than that, we could definitely mitigate all the students towards the front of the property and you know, keep that harmony with neighbors in the back. We did have a visit by the fire marshal. He came out, told us to correct a few things, some egress. I enlarged some windows, put in some egress in the downstairs basement area. I think he had an issue with the garage door. We got that fixed. Pretty much, at this point, should be ready for the fire marshal to come out and give his okay as well. Other than that, I guess I'm here for questions.
All right, I think what we'll do then is let you sit back down. We'll get the staff report and everything, and then when we have public testimony, if anyone needs to have anything clarified, we'll have you come back up. All right, and at this time, we will go for the staff report then.
Thank you, Chair Twait and fellow commissioners. This presentation is on Resolution PZ 2021-21, conditional use permit for a dormitory, as well as Resolution PZ 2021-40, which is a conditional use permit for a bed and breakfast at 702 Lawton Drive. Summary, applicants Edward and Kathleen Martin have submitted an application for conditional use permits for these uses for a dormitory and for a bed and breakfast. We can see the subject properties, well, it's actually properties. So 702 Lawton Drive is where the home is at 436 Rogers Drive, which is also owned by the applicant. That's essentially the backyard of 702 Lawton, but they are two separate parcels. The lot size being 702 Lawton being 0.28 acres, 436 Rogers Road being 0.25 acres. They're both zoned Suburban Residential 2. 702 Lawton has a single-family dwelling on it, and then the land use plan and the comprehensive plan is Suburban Residential as well. There we go. The dormitory use is intended for housing students at the Alaska Driving Academy. truck driving division, and basic civil construction students. The bed and breakfast would only operate when students are not staying at the property and requires the owners to live on the property per code. The parking requirements for these land uses are met with a lease that the applicants have with the Kenai Municipal Borough property next door at 750 Lawton Drive, and we'll discuss that a bit more on the next slide. And the subject property has previously had a conditional use permit for a bed and breakfast at 702 Lawton Drive, and that was from 1985 to 2019. This is the site plan showing both the 702 Lawton, 436 Rogers Street, as well as the lease area with the Kenai Peninsula Borough. And so this is a signed and executed lease. If I remember correctly, that was a 10-year lease with the borough. And this is specifically for parking. And this parking was in order to meet the requirement for both the dormitory use parking requirements as well as the bed and breakfast. Staff's analysis, pursuant to KMC 1420-150A, the intent of a conditional use permit is to allow some uses that may be compatible with the designated principal uses in specific zoning districts, provided certain conditions are met. KMC 1420-150E, conditional use permits review criteria, states 6 conditions that the Planning and Zoning Commission must deem to exist when establishing findings prior to issuing a conditional use permit. And we're going to go over those criteria now. And for those of you who'd like to follow along in the packet, this is from the staff report on page 19 of the packet. Criteria 1, the use is consistent with the purpose of this chapter and the purposes and intent of the zoning district. Staff's response is that both 702 Lawton Drive and 436 Rogers Road are zoned Suburban Residential 2. The Suburban Residential Zone is intended to provide for medium-density residential development in areas which will be provided with common utility systems. The specific intent in establishing this zone is, 1, to separate residential structures to an extent which will allow for adequate light, air, and privacy, and 2, to prohibit uses that would A, violate the residential character of the environment, and B, generate heavy traffic in predominantly residential areas. The vicinity to the west and east of the subject parcel has a residential character and consists of single-family homes on lots zoned Suburban Residential 2, which are buffered by Rogers Road. Trees on 702 Lawton Drive, as well as in the rear at 436 Rogers Road. The proposed use would increase the amount of traffic entering and exiting the parking lot at 750 Lawton Drive. It would not be entering the neighborhood via Rogers Road. It would not be generating heavy traffic in a predominantly residential area. Dormitory per code means a building, whether public or private, associated with a school, college, or university, and designed, used, and arranged for private sleeping, studying, and living accommodation for students. Bed and breakfast means a residential owner-occupied dwelling in which rooms are rented to paying guests on an overnight basis with no more than 1 meal served daily. The land use table provides that a dormitory and bed and breakfast are conditional uses for the Suburban Residential 2 zoning districts. Therefore, a conditional use permit must be granted for the operation of a dormitory and bed and breakfast. The applicant has provided a site plan that provides the layout of the premises. And actually, I'm going to go back just a couple slides to illustrate that criteria for one. That you can see that the residents on 702 Lawton and then 436 Lawton, Rogers, thank you. That 436 Rogers is really the closest neighbor to the subject parcels. To the east is the lease for the parking for the conditional use permit. and accessing off Lawton Drive would keep traffic from entering into Rogers Road and into the Suburban Residential 2 neighborhood. Since it is a corner lot, there is a little bit more of a buffer between 702 Lawton and other neighbors across Rogers Road. So there's just a little bit more space between this property and others, as opposed to properties that are along Rogers Road being much closer to one another. And then certainly across Lawton Drive, those are city parcels. That's the ice rink multi-purpose rec facility there. So as far as being in a Suburban Residential 2 neighborhood, this does have some setbacks and some buffers from other properties within that neighborhood in that district. Criteria 2, the economic and non-economic value of the adjoining property and neighborhood will not be significantly impaired. Staff's response is that the adjacent parcels to the south at 436 Rogers Road is owned by the applicant and acts essentially as the backyard for 702 Lawton Drive. It provides a buffer from properties to the south. To the east is a large undeveloped forested parcel owned by the Kenai Peninsula Borough, which the applicants have leased the portion closest to 702 Lawton Drive for parking. Parcels to the west are single-family suburban residential, which are buffered by Rogers Road and trees on 702 Lawton Drive. The City of Kenai multi-purpose facility is located to the north across Lawton Drive. Both the economic and non-economic value of adjacent properties should not be significantly impacted by the proposed dormitory or bed and breakfast. Criteria 3, the proposed use is in harmony with the comprehensive plan. Staff's response is that the land use plan from the 2016 comprehensive plan proposes a suburban residential land use for this neighborhood. The suburban residential land use classification is defined in the comprehensive plan. Suburban residential is intended for single-family and multifamily residential uses that are urban or suburban in character. The area will typically be developed at a higher density, lots are typically smaller, and public water and sewer services are required or planned. Some developments may be required to construct streets to a paved standard, and larger subdivisions may be required to provide sidewalks and public areas. Parks and open space land uses may be considered appropriate. The comprehensive plan has goals to support businesses and economic development to provide a high quality of life within the city. Below are specific goals and objectives from the comprehensive plan that support this conditional use permit application. Goal 1 of the comprehensive plan is to promote and encourage quality of life in Kenai. And that's Q4, promote the siting and design of land uses that are in harmony and scale with the surrounding uses. And as noted earlier, taking a look at the layout and how it's laid out with neighboring parcels should provide harmony and scale with the surrounding uses for both the dormitory and bed and breakfast conditional uses. Goal 2 of the comprehensive plan is to provide economic development to support the fiscal health of Kenai. Economic development 1, promote projects that create workforce development opportunities. This is dormitory housing that is providing housing for students for truck driving academy, and so it's directly providing support for workforce development opportunities for truck driving in the City of Kenai and the Kenai Peninsula Borough. Criteria 4, public services and facilities are adequate to serve the proposed use. Staff's response is that the subject properties have access to city water, sewer, natural gas, electricity, and telephone services and are accessed via paved, city-maintained road. Kenai Municipal Code 1420-250B8 requires that there is 1 space per principal dwelling unit and 1 per guest room or 1 for every 2 beds. Therefore, the minimum number of parking spaces required is 6 spaces. The attached application meets this requirement by providing parking at 750 Lawton Drive for up to 24 spaces, though the maximum number of spaces planned by the applicant is 16, which is more than sufficient for the stated 8 students per class. Parking is for students' privately owned vehicles, cars, vans, pickup trucks, and SUVs, and not for commercial trucks or vehicles. Classroom instruction takes place in Sterling. Criteria 5, the proposed use will not be harmful to the public safety, health, or welfare. Staff's response is that the use of a dormitory and bed and breakfast will not be harmful to the public safety, health, and welfare. Staff believes that public services are available to adequately serve this property. A bed and breakfast has operated on this subject property in recent years with a conditional use permit. The applicant has provided the city with a draft site plan and property lease with the Kenai Peninsula Borough, which indicates that there will be sufficient parking available for residents and guests. Access to parking is via Lawton Drive. Criteria 6, specific conditions deemed necessary. There are a number of them. There's 8, and actually, I'm going to actually go ahead and read through each of these. City staff find that the applicant meets the criteria for issuance of a conditional use permit for a dormitory, as set forth in subsections E1 through E6 of Kenai Municipal Code 1420-150, and hereby recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission approve the conditional use permit application subject to the following conditions. Condition 1. Further development of the property shall conform to all federal, state of Alaska, and local regulations. Condition 2, prior to starting operations, a landscape site plan must be reviewed and approved by the planning director. Access to parking is via Lawton Drive, and a driveway permit may be required for improvements at 750 Lawton Drive. Condition 3, the applicant will maintain its lease for parking with the Kenai Peninsula Borough at 750 Lawton Drive. If the lease expires or is severed, the applicant will notify the city planning director and demonstrate how the parking requirements will be met. Condition 4, a yearly conditional use permit report must be submitted to the city of Kenai prior to the 31st day of December of each year. Condition 5, the applicant will meet with city staff for on-site inspections when requested. Condition 6, if there is a change of use for the above described property, a new conditional use permit must be obtained pursuant to 1420-150 I-5. Condition 7, pursuant to KMC 1420-150 I-2, this permit shall expire automatically upon termination or interruption of the use for a period of at least 1 year. In Condition 8, failure to provide documentation to the city for meeting these conditions shall be grounds for the suspension or revocation of the conditional use permit. There is a separate conditions as well as resolution for the bed and breakfast. Here we go. City staff find that the applicant meets the criteria for issuance of a conditional use permit for a bed and breakfast as set forth in subsections E1 through E6 of Kenai Municipal Code 1420-150, and hereby recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission approve the conditional use permit application subject to the following conditions. Now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to read through all these ones as well. Condition 1, further development of the property shall conform to all federal, state of Alaska, and local regulations. Condition 2, prior to starting operations, a landscape site plan must be reviewed and approved by the planning director. Access to parking is via Lawton Drive, and a driveway permit may be required for improvements at 750 Lawton Drive. Bed and breakfast regulations per KMC 1420-321 must be maintained. There we go. Condition 4, buildings which are the subject of a bed and breakfast permit application shall be inspected by the fire marshal for compliance with fire code KMC 805 prior to the approval of the conditional use permit. Therefore, they shall be inspected every other year by the city fire marshal. Failure to comply with the fire code KMC 805 shall be grounds for the suspension or revocation of the conditional use permit. Condition 5, the applicant will maintain its lease for parking with the Kenai Peninsula Borough at 750 Lawton Drive. If the lease expires or is severed, the applicant will notify the city planning director and demonstrate how the parking requirements will be met. Condition 6, a yearly conditional use permit report must be submitted to the city of Kenai prior to the 31st day of December of each year. Condition 7, the applicant will meet with city staff for on-site inspections when requested. Condition 8, if there is a change of use for the above described property, a new conditional use permit must be obtained pursuant to 1420-150 I-5. Pursuant to KMC 142150I2, this permit shall expire automatically upon termination or interruption of the use for a period of at least 1 year. And condition 10, failure to provide documentation to the city for meeting these conditions shall be grounds for the suspension or revocation of the conditional use permit. I did also want to note that in the laydown provided this evening, there were 2 letters from neighboring property owners. There were essentially questions and some concerns. I do believe that much of the staff report actually answers a lot of these questions. I'd be happy to go through them in detail if that's something the Planning and Zoning Commission would like me to do. Or if certainly if anybody has any questions on there. I'm not sure if the actual persons are here in person to speak to their letter, but there were those concerns. Happy to address those if the commission would like me to. That's going to conclude my presentation, and happy to answer any questions.
All right, then I would look for a motion for just PZ 2021-21 by someone.
Chairman Twade, I'd like to make a motion for approval of Resolution PZ 2020-2021-21.
And a second.
Second.
All right, and now we'll open it up for public testimony. And this will be just geared specifically towards the dormitory portion of it. We'll have a separate public hearing for the bed and breakfast. So anyone wishing to come forward and testify regarding PZ 2021-21, if you come forward, state your name and address for the record, and we'll get started.
My name is Kay Reed. I live at 429 Rogers Road. So I am not right beside the property. I am across the street from the property. I do want to, in my mind, correct a couple of things that Mr. Foster said when he was talking about buffers, vegetation buffers and things like that. A few years ago, I could have said, yes, that was true. Now with the spruce removal that has happened with the last few years, that's not so true anymore. And the lot is a lot more open and not having a vegetation buffer like it had in the past. So that is why in my letter that I submitted, I was talking about a physical fence barrier because the vegetation does not exist with the fullness that it had been before. Also, I would like to see, as I mentioned here, there was a lot of remarks about coming in off of Lawton. That road does exist there. It's not being utilized. And coming in off of Rogers is not a good solution at this point in time, even though that's been laid over with gravel and stuff. Right now, that's a total ice sheet. And so I know that the neighbor that is adjacent to the property has had been privy to seeing, sliding vehicles and between mud at one time of the year and ice at this current point in time. That's why, yes, I would say yes to Lawton, no to Rogers, So anyway, but I did send you a letter here, and so those were some of the things. And I guess one of my other questions is, just like I asked in my letter, is there a number of people, that limit for dormitory? I mean, does dormitory mean 20 people down there, or does it mean 3 people down there? And not seeing a downstairs plan, what what does that look like? And is there bathroom facilities, per, building codes and things like that? So those are, and I also had asked about a quiet time, because I know sometimes when it's more light, yes, people do stuff a lot later and longer. But again, we've got a neighborhood where we've got students, I watch grandkids, and so yes, I'm concerned about, additional traffic, especially I've got a blind corner coming down Rogers, and then we're right there by an intersection too, a stop sign. So yes, them turning left across, basically shortly at an intersection is, to me, a little bit of a hazard. And like I said, removing the vegetation, now there's a lot more opportunity for sound to bounce off the buildings, and it does. It echoes. And I know that the one neighbor that's adjacent, they have a wonderful dog that does what dogs do. And so he's announcing, there's people coming down the driveway. I just say, hey, dog, but again, he's barking, the sounds are bouncing, hence why I asked for a physical barrier to help buffer some of the sounds there.
Okay, I'm going to stop you. And I think, I believe 8 students is what the right answer is. With that, we might be able to
Okay,
verify that. But I believe that was what that was
I
stated.
hadn't heard that, so
Yeah, right.
thank you
And
for,
if we could, I just wanted to, if we can pull up the map,
29.
and maybe you can point out where your place is, just so
Okay.
we have a reference.
Page 29.
29? 62 on
might be
mine.
You might be able to help.
the numbers are a little bit oddball right in there. So 429, let's see.
I have 62, so I think it's just up a little bit from where you're at there. There we go, right there. Yep. So,
Let me just get, okay. My house, the second one.
second one in. Okay, so there's like a duplex on the corner, and then yours is the next one in.
Yes,
Okay.
mine's this one here, so with
Almost across from,
this vegetation
Yep.
is not quite the same anymore.
right.
And so, and that vegetation is not the same anymore. So yes, there's no windows on that house, sound from here bounces.
Okay, great. All right, we'll see if anyone has any questions for you. Looks like Vice Chair Fikes might.
So, am I hearing you correctly? Were you saying early on that there was traffic coming out onto Rogers from behind there, or was it traffic coming onto
They're
Lawton?
only using the Rogers entrance and exit. And that is, it used to be just, there's no traffic coming utilizing Lawton other than the driveway in front of the house. That, I drove by it and there's no vehicle marks in there, so it's not being utilized.
Excuse me. So what you just demonstrated on the overhead there on page 29, where you said trees were removed, is that my understanding where you're visualizing cars coming and going out of that area?
Okay, so I was saying the trees that have been removed because of the beetle kill and the
Sure,
and the-
sure,
and
sure.
spruce stuff. So also, there used to be more visual barriers with the vegetation that was there, and that has been lessened considerably. And there used to be also more of a buffer with more vegetation there in the sound, and now with lesser vegetation there, the sound, even of just somebody being in the backyard having a picnic or doing things, it is amplified a tad bit just because of the way it's bouncing off buildings and things.
You got a follow-up, or you good?
I'm good, thank
All
you.
right, anyone else have any questions? All right. Oh, we'll maybe check with online if Commissioner Woodard has any questions.
No, I'm good, thanks.
All right, thank you. Okay, you can be excused. Anyone else wishing to testify to PZ 2021-21? Name and address for the record, please.
Brandon Kramer. I have a house at 427 Rogers Road, right next door. I was concerned about the driveway on Rogers Road also. So on the staff report it says it won't be used, but on the drawing there it said it would be used to access the parking lot. So a little confusion there on how they're going to get in and out. Definitely would like to see access on Lawton used instead of Rogers Road.
Anything else? Nope. All right, anyone have any questions? All right, thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify? Yep, go ahead.
I guess Ed Martin, again, son of Kathleen and Edward. I guess I would like to mention, since that access seems to be an issue, as this is the first I've heard of it, of course, that yes, we've been using that because it was an existing access to, I think, three, maybe four parking spots back there that were existing when we purchased the property. However, I would be absolutely willing to mitigate that. Had I known, I would have already mitigated it. Yes, access to Lawton probably makes more sense. You know, I would like to keep harmony with the neighbors, for sure. Like I said, it's a little late in the year to be building a driveway at this very minute, because I'm sure there's probably some, approach work to do there, and, maybe some concrete work or something like that, to tie into Lawton, obviously. Other than that, I would definitely want to say that the access from Rogers, I would definitely want to mitigate the traffic in that area, but I would still want the access there as it was existing access, like for snow removal or personal use, as far as my parents being able to use that, because the parking spots that are in the rear of that property are angled and designed for use on that particular access.
Which property are you talking about?
Which would be the south, not the piece of property that the house is on, but the one that's.
The one on 436 Rogers?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's just below it.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah, so, this is the access that everybody's talking about, right here, and it comes in along a fence line here, and then there's a couple of, I think, 3 parking stalls like this that are existing. They have, wood borders. They were all set in there with some D1 material and some 4x4 pressure treated 4x4s. So they're, definitely engineered, constructed parking stalls there. It would be very hard to use those parking stalls coming in from the other direction. But like I said, for an access over here on Lawton, I would be amenable to using that. However, I think that, like I said, it needs probably a little bit of work to construct that for like snow plowing and stuff like that, because I believe there's a curve there. It's probably going to need, like I said, a little bit of concrete work tie into Lawton. There's an existing kind of beat down trail there that obviously the borough must have used there. So it's probably accessible by pickup truck, but you wouldn't be taking a car down. Other than that, I imagine students with cars and stuff could probably, you know, I would definitely mitigate this usage down here, and they could park in the front.
Okay. Questions? Vice Chair Fikes?
So that area that you're talking about with those 4 dedicated parking, is that also the property that your folks own, and is that 436 lot?
Believe so.
Okay.
Yep.
That was
Or
under.
Rogers. That would be.
Yeah,
Rogers.
436 Rogers.
Okay, and there's no structure there, you're just utilizing that as the dedicated 4 spots in the past history when it was run as a B&B, is that?
Yes.
Okay.
They were existing there. There was, on that lot, there's the 4 parking spots, the existing access, and 2 sheds.
And in the past, how did you guys take care of snow removal in that area?
We haven't.
You
First
just-
winter, yeah.
Winter.
Yeah.
So in the past, when you had it as a B&B and parking, there was
They
no-
didn't. They just purchased it.
Oh, you just purchased the whole oh, I misunderstood, okay, my apologies.
Chairman Dwight.
Commissioner Springer?
I have a question regarding the dormitory. Where is it located in the house?
Mostly the upper floor.
Okay.
Basically the upper floor and the basement.
Okay.
What would the middle floor, I guess, the
Main.
Ground level?
ground level is personal space for the most
Okay.
part. That's my parents' living area.
All right.
And basically, the basement is study area, and the upper floor is living quarters.
Okay. And you're going to have 8 people in the upper floor, is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's 3 large rooms up there and 1, 2, 3 bathrooms up there.
Okay.
There's I think there's 10 toilets in that house. There's everywhere you turn, there's a bathroom and toilet.
Sure.
I mean, not a lack of facilities by any means.
And you said the fire marshal has looked at that for a dormitory?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and downstairs, he recommended for us to improve the egress. And we improved the egress in 2 spots this summer. Larger windows, larger window wells and ladders. I think we deleted 1 door just to open up egress in one area. Next summer, I think we have plans for some more egress.
I was going to say, is there a direct stairway to the exterior from the basement?
No, that is actually what we're planning.
Okay.
A direct stairway from the basement out. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Right now, there's
And-
2 large windows with window wells.
And that's where at this point in time, that's where the classroom's going to be, is in the
No.
basement?
Just a study area.
Study area.
Classroom is in Soldotna.
Okay.
And for the most part, I guess just so you guys understand, this dormitory from the students is really only used from 5, 6 o'clock at night to probably 6, 7 in the morning. That's when they're there. So the entirety of the day, there's no students there. They're at my facility in Sterling or at my classroom in Soldotna. They're busy. And when they get over there, we try and keep them busy with homework as well, so they're not mulling about and whatnot. I'm sure there's, not every student's the best student, a good studier.
They are truck drivers.
But we try to keep them, idle hands. So,
Yep.
but yeah, definitely 8 students is the plan for now, anyways. Although that housing could definitely accommodate more than that without a problem.
Will you be creating a better access off of Lawton then for parking?
It sounds like that would be the consensus.
Okay.
You know, although I would ask to, a little bit of leeway to do it in the spring, you know, when it's not frozen and whatnot. But like I said, right now, you know, probably, because I think there's a curb there, you know, there's probably accessible by truck, but, you know, I think there's gonna need some improvements in the springtime.
Okay, I think that's all I have for now.
All right, Commissioner Dothett.
I was just gonna bring up that road, that I believe you're talking about off of Lawton. Back when that residence was used as a bed and breakfast, it was a seasonal bed and breakfast for a fishing lodge. The Fendels, I believe, owned that for years. And they would pull their boats through there and kind of a circular driveway, and then they would park their boats behind there in the winter. And then they were only using seasonally, so they never really had a snow removal concern, so to speak, because they leased it out. They only used it really in the summertime when they were doing fishing business. And that's why they're really, I would imagine there's not like a big concern, because that's just where that was basically their boat parking back there for the winter.
Commissioner Halsted.
So right now, do you have students that are using that back on the 436 Rogers Road? They're going back and forth?
As of, when we got the permit from the Kenai Peninsula Borough and I did some improvements back there, there's a few students that go back there right now.
Is there space in the front right now where, like, just telling them to redirect and park in the front of the building instead of the back of the building? Is that, you've got spaces that are openly available for that and without an issue?
Probably room for 4 cars up there. And even though I get, 8 students, it doesn't mean that I'm gonna have 8 cars.
Right.
You know, a lot of students come in on a plane, they don't have a vehicle. And I encourage the students to, even if I have, say I have 8 students in 8 cars, I encourage the students to carpool. So there may be some parking there and the vehicle doesn't move for a month, because they're carpooling with with one of their fellow students. So I encourage that as much as possible.
I'm just trying to see if there would be an issue if there was that mandate to have everyone park in the front versus the back, and giving that leeway for the winter time, if that would cause hardships.
It could. It definitely could. I got room for probably 4 normal-sized vehicles up in the front, and I would definitely be willing to utilize that first, and then encourage anyone that parks in the back to carpool with the people that are parking in the front.
So if we did make that a requirement for your conditional use permit, with the understanding of, giving a little bit of flexibility, you wouldn't have an issue with that, or see a problem with that being an extra requirement for you, is to improve on that lot and drive parking lot? Do I have to say that all over again? So if we were to make that a requirement to, improve that lot and drive entrance and basically have your students park in the front or utilize that lot and kind of stay away from that Rogers Road entrance, would that be an issue for you as a requirement for your conditional use permit?
I would be willing to work with that. I mean, as long as it had a bit of leeway for, if I had all the students, like I say, I got spots for 4 up there, and if, I could still utilize the 4 parking stalls that I have in the back, but definitely be on a carpool scenario, or, like I said, to plow snow there and whatnot, and for my own personal parking. I mean, I would definitely I would make a very strong effort to utilize the rear parking as small as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Commissioner Dothett.
Just a question, is that rear parking, is it already permitted for a driveway off that lot? Is there a driveway permit and it's already permitted? Or was that done in the previous owners?
I'll defer to Mr. Foster on that, but I'm assuming if it was previously used with the other bed and breakfast, it probably is, maybe.
Through the chair, Commissioner Douthat, I'd have to check. I'd have to check that to see if there was indeed a driveway permit approved there.
And I don't know if there was even, would there even be a requirement for a driveway permit? I don't know that there,
Not for residential. Not
for residential, I don't know that there would, huh?
But it's in conjunction with the business, the conditional use
Yeah.
permit triggers.
Commissioner Springer?
Yes, question for you. If we put a timeline on you getting an access off a Lawton to make your main parking area off of Lawton rather than behind, would, say, a 9-month period be sufficient for you to get it done in?
Yeah.
Something
yeah,
like
that's-
that?
That's more than fair.
Okay.
I would say not, yeah, that would put me.
July 1 or
July,
something like that. I
yeah.
think that's probably
'cause
fair.
I mean, things will thaw out about May, that basically gives me a month to get my ducks in a row. I think that's fair.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Greenberg?
There's a picture of a culvert, and looks like an easement on some of the exhibits here. How does that, and it looks like it's pretty perched up, how would this, any development affect the water, or would this potentially affect the ability to put a driveway into that back lot?
That culvert doesn't actually cross any of the driveways. That culvert kind of bisects that, the borough's property, that I'm leasing. So, and it seems to, I don't know why that culvert's perched so much, but, you know, if I was to, improve that lot anymore, definitely a landscape plan would encourage the water to go into that existing drainage. Any additional drainage that may not already exist, which really wouldn't be much, I wouldn't think. And I would definitely say that I would landscape it in a way that no additional drainage would go towards Lawton. It would go to that culvert outlet.
So you don't see that being a problem with, you know, any development or accessing the lot, any water, you know, wouldn't see any issues with
No,
that?
because any drainage that I would modify or utilize would not go through that pipe, but would go in that same drainage galley that pipe is exiting into.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman Dwight?
Commissioner Springer?
I have another question for you. You mentioned something about a couple of storage sheds that were moved. Which lot are they on? Are they
They're on that lower lot.
the 436 Rogers?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
and they needed to be, when we purchased the property, they were like 2 feet onto the borough property, so we had to
Move them over.
yeah, we moved them over a few feet, you know, enough to where there's some access to the front of them and whatnot.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, so I got a couple of questions. So we're pretending or assuming 8 students. Do they all start at the same time? Are they going to be staggered? How long do 8 students stay there? How often will you be cycling them through?
Every 20 days,
Every 20 days?
thereabouts.
And-
The month of December, there will be none. So it's 11 months a year, about every 20 days. In the summertime, I have a construction class as well. And it staggers a little bit with the other course, but generally the same time. I mean, it's within a day or two here or there.
So you would start 8 at the same time and they finish together basically and you bring 8 new ones in?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Regarding quiet time, this time of the year, it's really not much of a big deal, but summertime certainly can be. If you got a fire pit out back and all of a sudden, you know,
Yeah, that wouldn't be our students. We don't allow any of that. They're there to study, not to have barbecues or fire pits or, yeah, we do not encourage that at all.
So if we put a little quiet time at, say, 10 PM, that would be completely fine with you?
Absolutely, because
Okay.
that's part of my house rules.
Okay,
Is 10 PM quiet time.
okay.
I actually have a big plaque on the front door, it says. And they all the students sign contracts to obey those house rules. And if they violate them, they're out. Yep.
Good to know. All right. Vice Chair Fikes?
Just quick question, do you allow smoking on the premises or vaping of any kind?
I guess we do right now. We have I'm not sure exactly. I wish my father was here. I'm sure he probably gave him a designated smoking area. I know I do at my property in Sterling, because we have the occasional smoker as a student. But really, to tell you the truth, it's maybe one, maybe two per class on average.
Designated areas and designated receptacles?
I would assume so. I definitely do on my other two properties, the classroom and the range, as we call it, at my place. And I'm sure my parents have a designated area there at the property. I'm not quite sure exactly where it is, but if there isn't one, I will create one.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair, Commissioner Dothett?
So just clarification, so you're saying 8 students throughout the year, 11 months roughly, but in the summer you mentioned you're having a secondary class. Is that an additional 8 students, so it could be up to 16? Is that what? For the summer months, because you got 2 different classes going?
I guess if we had a absolute full schedule and everybody needed housing, although that hasn't happened yet, I mean, potentially, I guess.
I just wanted to clarify.
Although like I said, that housing, I mean, there's 10 toilets in it. It's got the facilities for much more than 8. But 8 would be our goal year-round, 8 students.
One last one I have, regarding the parking situation until you can curb cut Lawton or whatever you need to do there. If it got to where either city received a complaint about something on Rogers, or you got 8 people that want to drive 8 vehicles would there be the ability to carpool from your facility in Soldotna or Sterling and minimize it to 5 or whatever's 8 or 7 or whatever's comfortable there?
Yes, absolutely, and we encourage that. We encourage carpooling. Yeah, I mean, if the snow and parking situation gets to be not amicable, not a smart thing to do over there, yeah, absolutely. It may be a situation where, yeah, they could park at the range and carpool. Yeah.
Okay. Looks like Commissioner Halstead?
Oh, I just had a question. Is that your mom up there in the top left corner, Kathy?
Yes.
Okay, I believe I saw her shaking her head in agreement
Oh.
when you were saying that there was smoking receptacles and
We should ask her if she wants to speak, maybe.
designated.
Oh, she's,
Star 9.
Oh, Kathy, if you want to go ahead and unmute.
Yeah. This would be like getting my mom to do it, and it's just
Yes.
not gonna happen.
Can you hear me now?
we can hear you.
Okay. There is a designated smoking area in the backyard between the house and the storage sheds, and it does have a proper cigarette butt disposal, those tower things you see at different businesses around town.
Very good, thank you. Anything else you want to add?
No, my only real surprise tonight was the letter from my neighbor, and I thought that we had a very open communication thing going, and I'm only sorry she hadn't chose to speak with us each and every time something supposedly happened. I believe in dealing with things immediately.
All right. Thank you much. All right, I think we're good. We'll give anybody that hasn't testified one last chance to testify. And seeing none, we will close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission. Yep, sorry.
If there's anyone on Zoom that wants to testify, you can go ahead and unmute at this time.
All right, now we'll close the public testimony and bring it back to the commission for discussion. Commissioner Springer, he's got his pencil out. He's ready to hit the button.
Yes. Question for staff. Under the dormitory, why is the fire marshal not involved in reviewing the building for the dormitory?
Mr. Foster.
Through the chair, Commissioner Springer, the fire marshal condition under the bed and breakfast resolution is specified in code for bed and breakfast.
I know, but what I'm asking is why isn't he involved in the dormitory?
I suppose he could be. It could be added as a condition. There's nothing from Title 14 that was saying that needs to be a requirement, though it might be something within that the fire marshal might want to consider, potentially.
Well, I would suggest they do because it's much more of a hazard code-wise that a dormitory is over a bed and breakfast. You know, you got a lot more people, you got have to have a lot more access. That's why I was asking the applicant whether or not there was going to be another doorway or exit way from the lower level, because you can't have a lower level with no direct access to the outside of the building. And that's why I want to make sure that the fire marshal is involved in that gets taken care of. That's my first question. My next question is, well, it's really not a question, I guess. It's more of a thought for administration to look into. Storage sheds on vacant lots. I don't believe that's allowed in your code. Therefore, something should probably be done about the storage sheds. They need to be removed or moved to the other lot that has a house on it. Let's see. Let me see if I've got anything else on my long list here.
Let me ask you, in regards to that, has that always been the code, or if these sheds have been there for 15 or 20 years, would they need to be grandfathered in, or?
Well, technically, they didn't meet code, and they should have had a permit issued for them, or they should have been approved back when they were built on the lot they were built on. If the administration missed that, that's a possibility. A lot of times that happens. So, but now that it's come to light that they were moved and that they're in the back of 436 Rogers Road, if we give approval for this, are we giving it approval for the sheds to stay there? I mean, that's a legal question. I guess I'd have to have the administration suggest they look into it.
Mr. Foster.
Through the chair, Commissioner Springer, we could look at that. First we'd want to just check to make sure where that location of the storage sheds are, whether it's on 702 Lawton or 436 Rogers Road. They are two separate parcels. So depending on where they're located, there be certain considerations. Now, they'd be considered most likely accessory structures. They can actually be on neighboring parcels if it's meeting certain conditions. So I think there's a size limit. I think it's maybe up to 400 square feet, and I'm not remembering the exact process that's required to place an accessory structure on a neighboring property in this particular condition. But that is something that code does address and does have a path forward, and that is something I could take a look at.
Okay. Have another question now regarding where was I lost my train here. I basically I thought about it. I'm looking at probably asking for an amendment to this, stating a time frame for access off of Lawton to be created. That's one aspect. I will also be asking for an amendment to have the fire marshal involved in the review of the dormitory to make sure that it meets fire codes, building codes and such. I've toyed with the thought of making an amendment saying that 436 Rogers Road should not be included in this in this CUP. So I may do that too, but I'm just forewarning you ahead of time. Thank you.
You want to make any of those yet, or would you like to discuss further?
No, wait.
Okay.
I'll do it shortly.
Commissioner Dothett.
So if they were to resurvey the lots and make them one, I don't know if that's an option, would that eliminate most of that problem? Just having it resurveyed and get rid of a lot line, would that resolve those issues? Just throwing it out there to see if that was an option or not.
Vice Chair Fikes.
Yes, I believe that would satisfy it. I also share a lot of the same concerns as Mr. Springer. I'm concerned about the traffic coming onto Rogers Road. It's narrow as it is with folks parking on the road if they're visiting or just in general, and then you're trying to get past them, and then you're trying to get past the kids walking to and from school. That is a house that sits almost immediately on the corner. So having traffic, if it's 4 vehicles, okay, I can see that could be the same number as a residential. It is a residential house. That seems reasonable, but now you're asking us to consider a business and asking for up to 8 vehicles to be coming in and out of there. And that really concerns me, as well as now you've got access coming off of Lawton, and what's the plan for snow removal over there, and what's the plan for drainage for snow removal? So those are some of my concerns, as well as not having ladders or not having any kind of egress and some kind of a safety plan in place. I would strongly like to see a fire marshal review as well before approving something of this nature. I see a clear, distinct line between a dormitory and a bed and breakfast, and I do not see this as a bed and breakfast.
So if I can jump in the middle so we don't have to have Mr. Martin come back up. I believe he stated that they enlarged the windows downstairs, enlarged the window wells, and put ladders out of those. And they're not sleeping rooms, they're just study rooms, so you're not sleeping there. So I don't know how that falls into play, but I know I've got a basement in my house that got egress windows out of it, but I don't have a door out of it. So, Mr. Springer,
Yes.
former building official, tell me.
Egress windows out of a basement that's being used for something other than a residential structure, such as a dormitory, or not dormitory, excuse me, study area, classroom, even though you're not using it as a classroom, that doesn't technically meet code. It would have to have a direct access to the exterior in order to be meeting code for that type of an occupancy.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion? Nope. I think you could start. Yep, go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to make an amendment to require the fire marshal to review the dormitory aspect of this structure on whatever basis he feels is necessary.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Discussion on the motion. Commissioner Halstead.
Can I question with a couple questions and comments? I apologize. This is Bridget Mitchell. I'm sorry. My daughter's logged in on my Zoom. So it's her name.
Technically, close the public hearing. Yeah, so we're gonna have another. Yeah, we're gonna have another public hearing regarding the bed and breakfast. So maybe I'll let you leak over.
That'd be great because I actually called into Zoom and my phone has been listening the whole time. And when it said I could unmute, I was not able to. So that's why I hopped on the video version.
Hold on one second. So let me ask you this. Do you have anything you want to add other than what is on your letter that you sent?
No, I think I just had a few questions that cropped up as I listened. And then I think they kind of link back to my conversation with Mr. Martin Sr. Specifically, when I spoke to him approximately a month ago, he had shared that there were plans for cement pad for the parking lot, and where my mind is going is that cement going to go down that driveway that they're asking for snowplow access availability to Rogers Road? Is that all going to be cemented, like right up to the cement pad? Because I guess I just wanted to know, I know that there were a few questions about the previous access from Rogers Road from the old bed and breakfast. And I know when I moved into my home, when I purchased it in July of 2020, it was, I'm not quite sure what you call it, like a two-track. I mean, it was just kind of two dirt grown over tracks going to Rogers. So I don't know that I would even call that a driveway. Anyhow, I'm just super curious if that's still the plan to cement that from Rogers all the way up to a giant cement pad, or how that would look.
All right. We will. I'm getting some shaking of the heads. I don't think so, cement. Probably not. I'm going to guess maybe there was a conversation about asphalt or maybe something like that, or D1 or something to that nature, to improve it probably. But we'll let Mr. Martin address that real quick if he wants to.
Sure. To my knowledge, definitely no big concrete pad. I don't know if the borough would want me altering their property that much, because that is kind of a very permanent structure on their property. So, I mean, any concrete work that would be done, I would assume would be
Curb
the
and
apron, curb gutter,
sidewalk,
you know, apron going into Lawton.
Sure.
But basically what I'm wondering is if there are plans to that driveway that you want to access personal parking from Rogers, basically all along the side of my house, in my side yard. I'm wondering if I should expect that to be like paved.
I don't see a
Was
reason
that,
to.
and maybe it wasn't the plan, but I know it sounds like you still want to have access to it and use it. And so I'm wondering how developed that's going to get.
I don't think I really want to pave it because, well, if I pave it, that's going to encourage speed. And obviously, this is the first that I've heard that we have a speed problem there. So, I mean, I already got gears turning in my head to put up signs for anybody that may go back there to tell them, you know, 2 miles an hour or something like that. I mean, I definitely want to mitigate this. I do not want to Definitely, I don't think it really requires pavement there, and if I paved it, I think there would be, that's just gonna speed people up.
Yeah, and I think by the time you could actually do anything there, you can take care of it on Lawton and gear your
Yeah.
parking there. So I think, and if there's enough room for, what'd you say, 24 parking spaces?
Yeah, and I
Potentially.
think my idea is to improve Lawton, and then basically the only person that'd really be using Rogers is probably Mr. Snowplow and my father.
Yeah, okay.
You know, direct all the other traffic the other direction, because, like I said, I want harmony here. I don't want, I just.
Yeah, no, I
you know.
super appreciate that. Your family, I mean, even though we've only spoken several times, has always been really kind and approachable. I'm just trying to get some clarity. So the 4 back parking spots at the rear of your second lot will continue to be used, but minimally, is what it sounds like.
What you're gonna expect is they'll be used as minimal as possible now until July 1st or whenever Lawton can be developed, and then most of the traffic, if not all, will be geared towards Lawton.
Wonderful.
All right.
I guess for the record, maybe we could clarify who is, since mom and dad are gone for the winter here, who's the best contact?
That would be me. Ed,
Okay.
Ed the
I
third.
just wanted to make sure.
Or,
Wonderful. I appreciate.
one of my instructors is staying at the property throughout the winter. So students aren't unsupervised. You know, I have an employee that stays there throughout the winter, Mark.
Oh,
Yeah.
wonderful.
He's
Okay.
a short guy with
Well,
glasses.
it sounds
You've probably
like
seen
you
him.
guys are very helpful and have great plans ahead. I got that feeling from your dad a few weeks ago as well. You know, he and I both acknowledge that there's winter ahead, that it's going to take some time. So I'm sure that there won't be any issues. I just know that there's like this interim period of winter. And I appreciate you stating that you would probably just kind of be mentioning it or putting up like a speed thing. Thank you. I greatly appreciate that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I don't want any mishaps.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and cut you off right there and stick close if you want to chat him again on the bed and breakfast. But we're gonna go back to the amendment that we have. If Mr. Springer would like to restate it, since it's been a few minutes again. I can remember it. Well, that's what I was afraid of.
Yes, I'd like to make an amendment that the fire marshal has a review of the dormitory on a whatever basis it is, whether it's yearly or every other year, whatever the case may be, and to make certain that it meets his criteria for code compliance.
All right, so we have that motion. It was seconded. Do we have any other discussion? Commissioner Greenberg?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on the vegetative border, because all the trees are dying at this point.
Well, let's just deal with the amendment right now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep, let's just keep them, otherwise I will be confused. So, on the amendment to include the fire marshal in the review. Any other, okay, we'll call the roll on that, please.
Commissioner Halsted?
Yes.
Commissioner Woodard?
Yeah.
Commissioner Greenberg?
Yes.
Commissioner Douthat?
Yes.
Commissioner Springer?
Yes.
Vice Chair Fikes?
Yes.
Chair Tweet?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, main motion as amended once. Any other discussion, or Mr. Springer, your next amendment?
I'd like to make another amendment to require the main access to be located off of Lawton with a timeline of creating the access by August 1st of 2022. Yeah, that's it.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion. Just to clarify, you said main access, you do mean main parking access, correct?
Correct, yes,
Okay.
main parking
Okay.
access, yes.
All right. No discussion? All right, please call the roll.
Commissioner Woodard?
Yes.
Commissioner Greenberg?
Yes.
Commissioner Douthat,
Yes.
Commissioner Springer,
Yes.
Vice Chair Fikes,
Yes.
Chair Twait,
Yes.
Commissioner Halstead,
Yes.
motion passes.
All right, main motion as amended twice now. Commissioner Greenberg.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on the vegetative buffers, because a lot of those trees are dying, and in the case that they do die and that disappears, would that be something that gets revegetated or in some way restored, or is there some way that we can ensure that?
Commissioner Dothett, you don't have anything? No. Well, so looking at the map or looking at the overhead, what we are now going to call the main parking area doesn't look like there's a bit of edge. It looks like the Mojave Desert to me, just about. So I don't know that there's much to revegetate there. The lot behind, I think, is the one that was the most concern, and that, if it follows through as it should, and that doesn't become a major parking area, I don't know that, I mean, it's open for discussion, I think. I don't know what we'd want to do is put maybe somebody want to put a fence in, or are we just talking about replanting with some wildflowers or something? Commissioner Dothett.
I'm guessing that what you're looking at is more like we've done with some of the larger construction projects. Just put something in there that says they have to plant so many trees, or along the fence line of the neighbors concerning, like the neighbor that just spoke up and the neighbor that spoke up across the street. If would it appease them to say that we're going to have them requirement to put so many trees as part of the lot revegetation project? Is that, I'm assuming that's what I'm thinking of? Just so many trees every so many feet, kind of like we do when we do a fourplex or a sixplex or whatever we've had recently on those buildings. Is that kind of what we're thinking of, Commissioner Greenberg?
Mr. Foster, one of these I know required a landscape site plan, so would anything be addressed in that landscape site plan that we could just push off to the review of that?
Yeah, Chair Twait, the primary intention of landscape site plan would be with the parking, and to make sure that the parking requirements are being met at 750 Lawton. It could be considered with a little bit more detail for 702 Lawton and 4036 Rogers Road. That could be a consideration. I would say typically, the landscape, site plans tend to be required for commercial projects and then multifamily projects. The reason why I included it as a recommendation to consider is just because there would be that much new work done with putting in a driveway, grading, drainage, and so on. And so that's something I think we would want to take a look at. I'd say it's certainly well within the commission's purview or consideration or authority to consider whether fencing or fencing or some type of vegetative buffer might be appropriate. I would say it's a little tough with this kind of project where essentially you have a single-family residence, but it is being utilized or looking to be utilized rather with conditional use permits for more of a commercial use. So our code doesn't really fit that like really well for kind of ensuring that buffer occurs. I'd say, and let me just back up a little bit. I'd say if this was a commercial project, that the landscape site plan would require between residential property, so at 436, the boundary of 436 and the neighbor to the south would require some type of either vegetation or fence. Again, this scenario doesn't exactly meet the code, requirement for that. And I think this is something that the commission is well within your purview to consider whether some type of fence or vegetation might be appropriate as a condition.
Commissioner Dothett.
We could do that as a condition, just in this case, because I think that might appease some of the neighbors that we've talked to. A vegetative barrier might be a lot more cost-effective than necessarily a giant sound-deafening fence. They could agree to put up so many trees along there to replace some of the trees they've already cut down. It would possibly be a condition we could add in. Is that what I'm gathering?
Could I add one small thing here? I know it's kind of out of, but I'd like to give you guys.
Tell you what, let's go through this whole thing. I'll let you speak if we haven't addressed it properly, if you haven't dealt with it. But I think we're gonna work it out, I think, so. Yeah. So I know it's, once we close the public hearing, though, I hate to keep trying to break it in there. So, Vice Chair Fikes.
Yeah, along those same lines and possibly addressing the applicant as well to follow up at a later time. There's several concerns here and several restrictions or barriers, I feel, as a commissioner with code, in the sense that you've got a residential lot at 437 that has problems with two structures.
436.
436, thank you, my apologies. 436 that has two structures that need to get that addressed and that clarified. And now we're trying to ascertain to satisfy a noise requirement, satisfy a site requirement to meet a conditional use permit, again, with this same residential property. And now we're talking about putting a fence in. So now are we within the easement? Are we right on the property line? Where's our code meet that? My suggestion possibly is the applicant would be willing, would be to, like somebody suggested earlier, eliminate that property line, and that's gonna change all the requirements there as to whether it's a 1 acre lot or a half acre lot. It's gonna change whether you put up a fence near the property line within 10 feet or whatever. So for us to try and come up with it tonight, I agree with, we need some kind of a barrier there, it sounds like. I understand and I hear that there's concerns over noise and doors and dogs barking and people coming and going, and you're in a residential and you're introducing commercial activity. I get that. I understand that it's their sleeping quarters, it's not necessarily their working quarters. I get that too. But I'm concerned where we are as a commission to draw that line of understanding to move forward with suggestions when we don't have a clear understanding of what that 436 is.
All right, so let me take a stab at this. We're gonna try my idea now. So, Commissioner Springer mentioned wanting to amend 436 out of it completely. So I'm gonna take care of his problem with it, I hope. I'm gonna take care of yours. So, and hopefully answer your question or take care of it at the same time. So, if we put a condition that 436 after August 1st is used for personal use and snow removal, then it's nothing more than a residential piece of property. We don't need to go down any barrier, any fence, anything. Subdividing it, great idea, but you'd think erasing an invisible line it costs money and it takes forever. So I don't think that works, and then that doesn't give them the ability, if they ever want to sell that lot for any reason, then it's got to be subdivided again. So I don't think that works for anybody or doesn't solve the real big problem. So I would like to make the suggestion that we put a condition on there that 436 is used until the property on Lawton is sufficiently developed for parking, and then 436 becomes nothing more than personal use, snow truck, personal vehicles, and snow removal. Then it's no different than any other lot in that whole, any undeveloped lot in that subdivision. That's my thoughts. So, does that take you close enough?
Makes quite a bit of sense.
Okay.
The only other thing I was gonna add is that, because everybody's talking beetle kill trees, there's actually quite a bit of shrubbery there.
Yeah.
And by the time the remaining trees die off, that shrubbery is gonna
Start to grow again,
grow.
yep, okay.
So,
All right, so I'm not gonna make my motion, but someone can if they want to. If not, we'll consider going down another road, but
Chairman Tweed, I'd like to go ahead and add a motion for an amendment to ask that the applicant be willing to utilize the lot at 436 for personal residential use only, for activity and parking for residential private use
After August 1st.
after August 1st.
All right. Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion. Yeah. That's what,
one was July.
well, your motion was August 1st, right? To have the lot and developed?
Right.
Yeah,
of-
okay.
Of
Yeah.
2022.
2020, well, we can't work backwards. Oh, yeah, not 2023, okay. So,
August
all right, is
1st
that what
to
you, is that your comment you
2022.
were gonna make?
Yeah, what year were you?
2022.
Okay.
Yep, we want to make sure we get it figured out. All right, any other discussion? Okay, we'll vote
Just
on that amendment,
one
please. Oh,
thing,
Commissioner Dothett.
Is this something that, my only concern is from past issues with conditional use permits, when we start doing something like this, the enforceability of it after August 1st. If we have neighbors complaining about it, thinking that they're using something other than, are we gonna have upset neighbors? And I'm not saying that they would, I'm just thinking of future complaints that we might see for enforceability issues of that, of something that broad or vague, I guess would be my guess wording on that.
Valid point for sure, but I don't know any of the conditions we put on that are gonna be complaint driven, or you're kind of giving a little bit of leeway to the applicant that they follow through with what they say they're gonna do. But I agree, I mean, hopefully that's where the neighborhood that, if it sounds like they're willing to try to keep a peaceful neighborhood, that if that's the case, everybody should be able to work it out. If not, we'll see it again, so. Any other comments? All right.
Commissioner Greenberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Dothett,
Yes.
Commissioner Springer,
Yes.
Vice Chair Fikes,
Yes.
Chair Tweet,
Yes.
Commissioner Halsted,
Yes.
Commissioner Woodard,
Yes.
motion passes.
All right, main motion now as amended 3 times. Any other amendments or discussion? Commissioner Dothett?
Just, again, we talked about it, the amendment for possibility noise ordinance. I know it's written on the doors, it's policy there, but just so we have it in writing for the conditional use permit, it'll probably go to the same. I could see this being also an amendment for the next bed and breakfast feature of this, but just to put some kind of quiet hours in there. And I think that we would have to do something that would fall into the weekend days too, because there's class weekdays, but we need to make sure there's something that would go all 7 days a week, a noise ordinance type of thing. Some kind of a noise hours. I would suggest with approval 7 to 10, or 10 PM to 7 AM noise, quiet hours, unless somebody else wants to do different.
6 a.m.? Let's go 6 a.m. These truck drivers got to get them to go to work. So, okay, so 10 p.m. to 6 a.m.? Go ahead and put that in the form of a motion, please.
Motion for setting a noise, quiet hours from 10 PM to 6 AM.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, discussion. Seeing none, please call the roll.
Commissioner Dothett,
Yes.
Commissioner Springer,
Yes.
Vice Chair Fikes,
Yes.
Chair Tweet,
Yes.
Commissioner Halsted,
Yes.
Commissioner Woodard,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenberg,
Yes.
motion passes.
All right. Main motion as amended 4 times. Any other discussion or amendments? Get me all choked up here. All right. Seeing none, we have the main motion as amended. I don't think we need to read those amendments, do we?
Do you want me to?
I don't think we need to. I think we're good. So we'll call the roll on that, please.
All right. Commissioner Springer,
Yes.
Vice Chair Fikes,
Yes.
Chair Tweet,
Yes.
Commissioner Halsted,
Yes.
Commissioner Woodard,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Dothit.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, and I guess I'll say this twice. There's a 15-day appeal period that an affected party can file with the clerk's office. If no one files it, then that permit will be granted then. Now I would like a motion to approve PZ 2021-40 for the bed and breakfast.
Through the chair, I'd like to make a motion, we approve PZ 2021-40, an application for a conditional use permit for dormitory bed and breakfast for the property described as 702 Lawton Drive.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And just to clarify, it's not the dormitory, just the bed and breakfast. All right, we'll now open it up for public testimony. Anyone wishing to speak to PZ 2021-40? Anyone out there on Zoom? Do we want to make sure that lady that couldn't get in, she's gone. All right, everything was taken care of. Okay, we'll close the public hearing, then bring it back to the commission for discussion. Commissioner Dothit.
You had mentioned, staff had mentioned that for the bed and breakfast ordinance to go through, that it's required that the owner of the residence has to live there. Is like a time frame that they have to live there, or just as their residents in general?
Through the chair, Commissioner Douthat. Yeah, there is a separate section of code 1420-321, bed and breakfast establishments, and so specifically for this use, there is additional provisions in code, and so 1420-321B, provided that these establishments shall be owner operated, not more than one person outside the family shall employed in the bed and breakfast, rent out more than 30% of the total floor area, have adequate off-street parking for owner and all guests, and shall meet all of the requirements as set forth by the Planning and Zoning Commission at the time of the public hearing. And this is also the section of code, really the other kind of big difference for bed and breakfasts as opposed to other conditional use permits, and that's the fire code inspections that's required by this section of code. And I'll just read through that really quickly. Buildings which are subject of a bed and breakfast permit application shall be inspected by the fire marshal for compliance with the fire code KMC 805 prior to the approval of the conditional use permit. Therefore, they shall be inspected every other year by the city fire marshal. Failure to comply with fire code KMC 805 shall be grounds for the suspension or revocation of the conditional use permit. So those are the big differences in the code for bed and breakfast establishments.
So just to clarify, there is no requirement for them to actually have to reside at the residence, correct?
Through the chair, Commissioner Douthat. I don't believe, so what I would say is provided that these establishments shall be owner operated. I guess it depends on the interpretation of that. Is it still owner operated if they are not residing at 702 Lawton? Yeah.
I just have a question so I guess clarification. The purpose of it needing a bed and breakfast, is that because they're going to be serving a meal, I'm assuming? Is that the reason for the bed and breakfast, or wouldn't the dormitory already assume the use of this, correct? You can go, yeah, for the...
I
okay.
believe this is kind of my mother's backup plan on if I don't have students at some point, that she'd be able to fill it with other occupants. Whether she would actually serve a meal or not, I haven't discussed that with her, but I would assume that she could. There you go. She's not cooking, so, and I would assume that she would only do it while she is residing there. She probably wintertime not gonna monkey with it.
Mr. Foster.
Clarification,
Yep.
Through the chair, Commissioner Douthit. It's actually in the definition section of code. It's not in the 142321 section for bed and breakfast establishments. It's actually in the definition of it. Bed and breakfast means a residential owner-occupied dwelling in which rooms are rented to paying guests on an overnight basis with no more than one meal served daily.
So I thought that's where the clarification comes in, so it's just kind of that weird middle ground. So while it's being used as the dormitory, they're not required to be there, but if it's used as a bed and breakfast, then technically the owner would have to be there.
Owner occupied, yeah.
Owner occupied. Okay.
All right, more discussion. Mr. Springer? Done. All right, I will just say that I think, since it seems like this is the easy cookie cutter, since it's been has operated in the past as a bed and breakfast, it certainly meets the criteria, has met the criteria for quite a while, and so I'll be voting in favor of it. Seems like it's the right way to handle this, that we have it as two separate ordinances, but it's tied in and handled this way. So again, I'll be voting in favor of it. So if there's no other discussion, Commissioner Dothett.
I just had one quick, you had mentioned the 30% of the building, so they can't use more than 30% of it as bed and breakfast?
Mr. Foster.
Through the chair, Commissioner Douthit, that is correct. Rent out no more than 30% of the total floor area for the bed and breakfast use.
And to clarify, that doesn't affect anything with the dormitory use, correct?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. Yeah.
I will just throw it out as an idea. Would we have the opportunity to put quiet time on a bed and breakfast? If we don't, then it's not on there, and it's not something that's going to get added in a year from now. So again, if we want to do that, we could do that via an amendment and take care of that if we wish to. So we could throw it out there, make an amendment, and we can discuss it if nothing else. Commissioner Dothett.
Yes, I'll make an amendment to a motion, to put quiet hours, same as the dormitory, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m.
7 days a week.
7 days a week.
Okay. We have a second.
Second.
All right. Discussion. Commissioner Halstead.
If we're making this a requirement, why don't we have this for all of our conditional use permits that meet these criterias? We shouldn't have to amend this to every one or single out a specific individual either, just because of their location, so.
And I think if we had some 20/20 hindsight on a lot of them, we probably would have put them on. We can't retroactively do it, it doesn't appear, so I think if we just fix it going forward on any of the new ones. But yeah, I agree, but I think they're unique enough that probably, instead of just cookie cutter saying they have to have this time frame, depending on what the conditional use is, could be a 24-hour daycare, and that doesn't make sense, so.
I would strongly encourage it on a 24-hour daycare.
It could be. So, could be a doggy daycare, so. All right, so any other discussion on the amendment? Okay.
Commissioner Springer?
Yes.
Vice Chair Fikes?
Yes.
Chair Twait?
Yep.
Commissioner Halstead?
Yes.
Commissioner Woodard?
Yes.
Commissioner Greenberg?
Yes.
Commissioner Dothett?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, main motion as amended. Any other discussion or amendments? Commissioner Woodard, you're good?
Yes, I'm good.
All right. Seeing no other discussion, please call the roll.
Vice Chair Fikes?
Yes.
Chair Tweet?
Yes.
Commissioner Halstead?
Yes.
Commissioner Woodard?
Yes.
Commissioner Greenberg?
Yes.
Commissioner Dothett?
Yes.
Commissioner Springer?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, same thing, 15-day appeal period. If an affected party files one, that would hold it up. If no one does, then that'll be granted in 15 days as well. And I thank you for your time. We will move on now to item F2, Resolution PZ 2021-38, an application for a conditional use permit for a recreational vehicle park for the property described as Lot 2, Block F, Beaver Creek, Alaska subdivision, amended, located at 6575 Kenai Spur Highway, Kenai 99611, application submitted by Casey Gaze. Can I get a motion, please?
Chairman Tway, I'd like to make a motion for approval of Resolution PZ 2021-38, application for conditional use permit for a recreational RV park.
And a second.
Second.
All right. I'm assuming applicants? Yeah, okay, if you want to come up, same thing, just give a brief overview of what you're trying to do here, and then we'll take it from there. State your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Casey Gaze. My wife Leon and I reside at 6575 Kenai Spur Highway for the past 5 years, and recently acquired the neighboring 3 properties.
That will pick it up fine. You can set it down. It'll catch it.
Okay.
Yep.
And I'm here to answer any questions you may have or concerns. Thank you.
All right. We'll let you sit down, and we'll go from there. If we have any questions, we'll bring you back up. All right, staff report.
Thank you, Chair Twait and fellow commissioners. This presentation is on Resolution PZ 2021-38, conditional use permit for a recreational vehicle park at 6575 Kenai Spur Highway. Oh, sorry. let you catch up.
Quick question, is that where Morgan Steel is? In that area, same area? Nearby.
Brief summary, applicant Casey and Lana Gaze submitted an application for a recreational vehicle park, conditional use permit for a recreational vehicle park. This actually is across 3 subject parcels, all owned by the applicant. 6575 Kenai Spur Highway, 6607 Kenai Spur Highway, and 3415 Mud Hen Drive. These are zoned general commercial. So the 2 parcels next to each other that border the Kenai Spur Highway, those are zoned general commercial. 3415 Mud Hen Drive, the parcel to the south, is actually zoned rural residential. And then the current land use is 6575 Kenai Spur Highway as a single-family dwelling, and 6607 Kenai Spur Highway and 3415 Mud Hen Drive are both vacant. The land use plan for all 3 of these properties are general commercial. Next slide, please. Thank you. The applicants have submitted a conditional use permit for a 32-space recreational vehicle park for summer use per Kenai Municipal Code 142210 land use table. A recreational vehicle park land use requires a conditional use permit in both the general commercial and rural residential zoning districts. Next slide, please. Here we have a draft of the site plan identifying the layout of the 32 space RV park across all 3 of the subject parcels. In the lower left-hand corner, you can see the existing development of the residents there. Next slide, please. Staff's analysis. Pursuant to KMC 142150, A, the intent of a conditional use permit is to allow some uses that may be compatible with the designated principal uses in specific zoning districts, provided certain conditions are met. KMC 142150E, conditional use permits review criteria, states 6 conditions that the Planning and Zoning Commission must deem to exist when establishing findings prior to issuing a conditional use permit. Next slide, please. Now we're going to go over these review criteria, and anybody who'd like to follow along from the staff report, it's page 85 of the packet. Criteria 1, the use is consistent with the purpose of this chapter and the purposes and intent of the zoning district. Staff's response is that both 6575 Kenai Spur Highway and 6607 Kenai Spur Highway are zoned general commercial. The proposed recreational vehicle park meets the intent of the general commercial zone to provide for areas where a broad range of retail, wholesale, and service establishments is desirable. Uses are regulated to concentrate commercial development to the greatest extent possible and to prevent any uses which have an adverse effect upon nearby properties. New single and two-family residential uses and other non-commercial uses, except as otherwise provided in this chapter, are not permitted in this zone as principal uses because it is intended that land classified in this zone be reserved for commercial purposes and because a commercial zone is not suited to the uses excluded above. A recreational vehicle park would be a primary commercial use. 3415 Mudhead Drive is designated rural residential. The rural residential zone is intended to provide for low-density residential development in outlying and rural areas in a form which creates a stable and attractive residential environment. The specific intent in establishing this zone is to, 1, separate residential structures to an extent which will, A, preserve the rural open quality of the environment, and B, prevent health hazards in areas not served by public water and sewer. And 2, to prohibit uses which would A, violate the residential character of the environment, and B, generate heavy traffic in predominantly residential areas. A recreational vehicle park is consistent with the intent of the rural residential district by preserving the rural, open quality of the environment with a site design that preserves as many trees as possible and creates privacy between neighboring parcels, as well as RV parking spaces. Recommended condition 2, applicant will provide a copy of DEC compliance certification on the water/sewer system. The well, as shown, will likely need to be separated further from the proposed dump station, would prevent health hazards in an area not served by public sewer and that is served by a private well. Parcels in the vicinity of the subject parcels do not have a residential character and consist of general commercial uses and vacant lots. The proposed use would increase the amount of traffic entering and exiting the subject properties, but would not be generating heavy traffic in a predominantly residential area. The land use table provides that recreational vehicle parks are conditional use for both general commercial and rural residential zoning districts. Therefore, a conditional use permit must be granted for the operation of a recreational vehicle park. The applicant has provided a site plan that provides a layout of the premises. Criteria 2, the economic and non-economic value of the adjoining property and neighborhood will not be significantly impaired. Staff's response is that the adjacent parcels located to the south, east, and west are vacant. Parcels to the north across the Kenai Spur Highway consist of a propane business, a Homer Electric Association facility, and a steel distributor. All general commercial land uses that should not be negatively impacted by the proposed recreational vehicle park. Both the economic and non-economic value of adjacent properties should not be impacted by this change. And actually, let me see if this would seems to be working. And we can see here on the aerial maps. The one on the left shows the zoning, so that general commercial for parcels that directly abut the Kenai Spur Highway, and then set back the rural residential. But we can see that around the subject properties, they're all vacant on the south side of Kenai Spur Highway for several lots in both directions, and then directly across the Kenai Spur Highways, where you find the propane business, and adjacent to that would be the Homer Electric Association facility, and then looks like either maybe a lot or two further down is that steel distributor. So it just gives you an indication that you know, what the character of the surrounding parcels are, and that they're certainly not residential in nature. Criteria 3, the proposed use is in harmony with the comprehensive plan. The land use plan for the 2016 comprehensive plan proposes a general commercial land use for this neighborhood. The general commercial land use classification is defined in the comprehensive plan. General commercial is intended for retail, service, and office businesses that serve Kenai and the larger region. General commercial is appropriate for locations along the arterial road system. General commercial type development requires larger parcels of land and access to a major road system. It is also intended to support smaller scale businesses. All of the parcels adjacent to the Kenai Spur Highway are zoned general commercial. The lots located behind those zoned general commercial are zoned rural residential, though the vast majority are not accessible by existing roads and have platted rights of way, which we can see here on both of these maps, that the rural residential lots don't have existing physical access but are just platted rights of way. The comprehensive plan has goals to support businesses and economic development and to provide a high quality of life within the city. Below are specific goals, objectives from the comprehensive plan that support this conditional use permit application. Goal 1 of the comprehensive plan is to promote and encourage quality of life in Kenai. Quality 4, promote the siting and design of land uses that are in harmony and scale with the surrounding uses. And quality of life 9, encourage healthy lifestyles by providing opportunities and or facilities for outdoor activities. And so this recreational park does provide that opportunity for folks to spend time outdoors. And there are some facilities nearby. There's the walking path that goes along the Kenai Spur Highway. So folks at the proposed recreational vehicle park would have access to walking from the property. And then there is other amenities nearby that could be conducive to outdoor activities. So there is, you actually see on the map on the right, you can see there's the racetrack, there's dirt bike events and motor vehicle events there as well. Goal 2 of the comprehensive plan is to provide economic development to support the fiscal health of Kenai. The tourism industry is an important component for economic development within the city of Kenai. Economic development 9, capitalize on the tourism industry by marketing Kenai as a destination for recreational activities, conventions, festivals, arts, cultural, and other events. Goal 3 of the comprehensive plan is to develop land use strategies to implement a forward-looking approach to community growth and development. Land use 2, promote the infill of existing improved subdivision lots. And what we have here are existing lots. Many of them are vacant, and the proposed application would indeed be infilling existing subdivision lots. And I also wanted to point out here on the map on the right is where you can see from the comprehensive plan that they're all designated for general commercial use for all of these parcels. Criteria 4, public services and facilities are adequate to serve the proposed use. The subject properties are accessed via paved State of Alaska Department of Transportation maintained highway. There are no city sewer services in the vicinity, therefore a private septic system will be required. City water services are located in the northern half of the right-of-way on the Kenai Spur Highway, but beyond the 200 feet required for connecting to the public water system per Kenai Municipal Code 171010. The subject property is located approximately 255 feet from the existing water line in the right-of-way. The application proposes utilizing a water well. A dump station is proposed for use by recreational vehicles. Recommended condition 2 requires providing the city DEC compliance certification of the water and wastewater systems. And that reads 2, applicant will provide a copy of DEC compliance certification on the water and sewer system. The well as shown will likely need to be separated further from the proposed dump station. There's access to natural gas, electricity, and telephone services. Criteria 5, the proposed use will not be harmful to public safety, health, or welfare. Staff's response is that there are recommended conditions with requirements related to public safety, health, and welfare. Number 3, provide accommodations for trash and restroom facilities. And number 4, prior to starting operations, a landscape site plan must be reviewed and approved by the planning director, which shall include a site grading plan that minimizes runoff onto neighboring properties and demonstrates sufficient space to prevent backup onto the highway and demonstrates sufficient space for emergency vehicles to respond to all RV sites. Criteria 6, specific conditions deemed necessary. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to read the recommended conditions. City staff find that the applicant meets the criteria for issuance of a conditional use permit as set forth in subsections E1 through E6 of Kenai Municipal Code 1420-150. And he hereby recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission approve the conditional use permit application subject to the following conditions. Condition 1, further development of the property shall conform to all federal, state of Alaska, and local regulations. Condition 2, applicant will provide a copy of DEC compliance certification on the water and sewer system. The well, as shown, will likely need to be separated further from the proposed dump station. Condition 3, provide accommodations for trash and restroom facilities. Condition 4, prior to starting operations, a landscape site plan must be reviewed and approved by the planning director, which shall include a site grading plan that minimizes runoff onto neighboring properties and demonstrates sufficient space to prevent backup onto the highway and demonstrates sufficient space for emergency service vehicles to respond to all RV sites. Condition 5, prior to beginning construction of any new structures, a building permit must be issued by the building official for the City of Kenai. Condition 6, staff encourages the applicant pursue consolidation of the 3 subject parcels into one parcel and submitting a rezoning application to rezone 3415 Munhead Drive from rural residential to general commercial. Condition 7, a yearly conditional use permit report must be submitted to the City of Kenai prior to the 31st day of December of each year. Condition 8, the applicant will meet with city staff for on-site inspections when requested. Condition 9, if there is a change of use for the above described property, a new conditional use permit must be obtained pursuant to 1420-150 I-5. Condition 10, pursuant to KMC 1420-150 I-2, this permit shall expire automatically upon termination or interruption of the use for a period of at least 1 year. And condition 11, failure to provide documentation to the city for meeting these conditions shall be grounds for the suspension or revocation of the conditional use permit. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to stand for questions.
All right, thank you, and we will now open it up for public testimony. Anyone wishing to come forward and testify to PZ 2021-38. And at this time, I'll ask the commissioners if any of them have any questions for the applicant. We'll have them come up here. If they do. Okay, that looks pretty promising. And anyone else from the public wishing to testify? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission for discussion. Any discussion? Commissioner Dothett.
I would just like to say that Happy to see somebody's taking the foresight to try to develop some of this property. I think that's an underutilized area of land. I think this is a great idea for that area, and I look forward to seeing how it turns out, and I will be voting for it because I think this is the kind of thing that Kenai needs to see to be developed, and I see it being a good idea and a good spot and location for it, especially with the new road construction there. There's plenty of ample space for RVs to be able to pull in and off of that road safely with having that center turn lane and the extra lanes now. Now that that's been updated, I think this is a good fit for that area.
Thank you. I have a quick question of staff. The residence that's there that's zoned commercial?
Church Wait, that's correct. It is
Okay.
owned general commercial.
So is there any alterations to that? There's no problem with doing that as far as conditions or conditional use for anything
Yes,
residential and general commercial?
That's a good question. Actually, with the conditional use permit and the use for an RV, recreational vehicle park, that actually the per code the residence would fit in better being considered a secondary use. So residences are in general commercial allowed as secondary uses. So it would actually be an improvement in meeting code. And I'll just say I'm not sure exactly how it came to this point that the residence was on general commercial, but that this would actually
Clean
improve
it up then.
the zoning. Yeah,
Good.
Yeah, the
Okay.
zoning compliance.
That's what I was hoping to hear. Okay. Any other discussion? And I will just kind of echo Commissioner Dothat's sentiments as far as having it here, that those dollars are best spent in Kenai, in our opinion, and they go to Walmart and spend money on stuff and do things, and so I think that's good for what we're looking for, so I will also be in favor of it. And if no one else has any discussion or comments, we will call the roll, please.
Chair Tweet,
Yes.
Commissioner Halsted,
Yes.
Commissioner Woodard,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Dothat,
Yes.
Commissioner Springer,
Yes.
Vice Chair Fikes.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, and like the other two before it tonight, there's a 15-day appeal period. If no one files with the city clerk, your permit will be granted. Appreciate it, thank you. Everybody good to keep moving along, or we need a 5-minute break, or good? All right. We'll move on to item F3, Resolution PZ 2021-39, recommending the Council of the City of Kenai approve and adopt a City of Kenai Land Management Plan. And clerk's note, at the October 27th meeting, this resolution was postponed to this meeting, so there is an active motion on the floor. We will pick it up with any other discussion. I don't know if staff has anything to, yep, please do.
Thank you, Chair Twait. I did want to pass along to the Planning and Zoning Commission. We have provided presentations to, last week was Parks Commission and Beautification in a joint session with them. Monday night was with the Harbor Commission, and last night with the Airport Commission. I did want to inform there's some good discussions. All of them have postponed to some of them. Let me see here. Parks and Rec and Beautification to a date specific. So they're actually on January 6th going to meet. They're going to take time to digest what is a pretty significant document, the land management plan, compile their comments and bring those forward for further discussion on January 6th. The Harbor Commission selected to postpone until January. They actually didn't have a specific date because they don't have a January standing date, but they are going to select a date in January to come back. And again, the intention is that they want to spend more time reviewing it and then reviewing, things that fall within their purview and their subject matter expertise, and they can review some of their plans and consider comparing that to the draft land management plan. And then the Airport Commission postponed to their December meeting date. Also acknowledging that it's possible they might postpone it beyond that as well. But I just want to pass that along. The other commissions are taking a good chunk of time to review the draft land management plan, really put together their comments, and coming back at a later date to have that discussion. And I would just say I'd certainly, if the Planning and Zoning Commission felt like you needed more time to review it and think about it and put together comments, I would certainly encourage you to utilize that. But as we know as well, there's the motion on the floor, and this is your resolution to do what you would like to do with it. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
And we did want to open it back up for public testimony, I believe, as well, correct? So we got some people out there. I don't know if anyone wish to come testify, but if they do, please come forward.
Thank you, Bob Malloy, Kenai resident, 513 Ash Avenue, Kenai. Appreciate the opportunity to make a few comments to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Definitely recommend you taking whatever time you might need to. Just a couple points, couple big picture, and then a little bit in the weeds. One thing that I saw that seemed to be missing from the land management plan was really a discussion over covering continuing evaluation of city-owned lands for future needs and for public purpose, and or specifically acquisition, potential acquisition of other lands for public purpose. And in the recommendations page, that's the last page of the document, the only thing relating to acquisition is acquisition of, it's short-term vision, it's acquisition of land for the Bluff Erosion Project. But we have city lands, and we're gonna have needs for your grandchildren and your grandchildren's grandchildren. So that's something. The other thing that I also thought about is that there's a couple of parcels, and this will be getting into the weeds, and I'll talk about two of them, that have had decades of public comment and a lot of controversy. And so it might be appropriate for there to be another category, and I don't know how you would put this, but to be determined or something like that. Because there's only 4 categories of recommendations, and there are administration recommendations, and then they go into the document, and so I'll talk about 2 of them, and one of them is known as the Walker Lane Buffer Strip, and so that's the page 158, map 31, and it's identified as parcel 047052116, but in the comment section, they don't talk about some other important information, and one is that it has a long history, subdivision development history, and in 2007 there actually was an attempt to subdivide the property that some of you may remember, and it really didn't end up going through. And in the comment section, it talks about utility right-of-ways. But one thing the council did at that time was they did do a deed restriction on the southern half of the property, that was kind of consistent with the plat note from the 1978 development. There's a plat note number 3 that said that Lot 1, and in 1984 it became Lot 1A, as shown here, and it's reserved for a buffer strip to screen the subdivision from the residential area of First Avenue, which is now Walker Lane, and is not intended for development. And the problem that happened was in the 84 replat, they didn't mention that at all, so the city took the position that it was gone But a title company in the borough said, well, you can't really vacate a plat note that way. So the replat that the city was trying to do never went anywhere. I was gonna talk about Lawton Acres, but. Okay, 10 more seconds, thanks. So anyway, in the comments section, it should say something about that there being a deed restriction. Of course, they're proposing to retain it for that purpose. The top half is a really narrow lot, but who's ever going to be maybe doing that? I see probably the only use that could be is maybe an extension of the existing building. It's too small for anything else, really, but that might require a quiet title action from the city because of the plat note. And anyway, then Lawton Acres. Okay, so this is not identified as Lawton Acres in the, but everyone knows it as Lawton Acres. This is on page 154. It's map 31, and of course, this has quite a long history too. And there's this last came through you and the City Council in 2017, and there's a memorandum from Scott Bloom from January 19, 2017 that lays out some of the development history of Lawton Acres. But I guess my point about that is that it's kind of like an asterisk property, so saying that it's going to be mixed and disposed when there's been decades of controversy over it. I mean, maybe that decision should be determined and determined later. But in the blurb on it, it's the last blurb on page 158. There's no mention of this history. Like going back to 1985, there was the Pizza Hut application, and that went nowhere. Pizza Hut had to go elsewhere because of petitions and comments. And then 2005, we were looking at to rezone it to limited commercial, and that didn't go anywhere because of public comment. And then 2013, we were looking at city was looking at it, making it a limited commercial zone, and that was part of the comprehensive plan that got voted down. And then 2016, there was that application and went back and forth, and there was a lot of public comment over that. That was by Jeremy Surface or something like that. And the city ended up doing nothing. They kind of threw up their hands, and nothing came out of that. There's one sentence here that kind of troubles me. It's now it's used for the field of flowers. And see, there's nothing in here about potential contamination, which, everybody knows that the site there was used for fire training for a while, and then the elevation got changed because when we constructed the football track field, we moved a lot of the overburden over there and put it up there, and then we put the field of flowers on top of it. But anyway, the sentence that troubled me says that the parcel has a high fair market value because of prominent frontage along the Kenai Spur Highway. And that's maybe true, but it didn't take, there was a McSwain appraisal back then in 2016, valued at about $480,000, but I don't think the assumptions took into consideration potential, contamination and the effect of that in the property. So, thank you.
Anybody have any questions? We should refer it as the Gaza Strip, maybe. Huh? It's just going to be battled on for.
It kind of should have an asterisk or something be determined. I really think it's, just saying right off the bat that the property is going to be developed and sold. I understand there's, revenue issues with the airport because it's airport land, and that's gone back and forth, and the city's talked about having the residents buy it or maybe buying it themselves or whatever, but always ended up throwing up their hands and doing nothing really. So thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Anyone else?
Christine Schmidt, 513 Ash Avenue. I hope you will postpone this matter to a later date like the other commissions have. I'm very concerned about the fast track this project's been on. The plan's only been out for a month. And I don't consider that there's been very little public outreach. I'm pretty sure nobody knows anything about this except geeks like Bob and I who pay attention. And also, it's hundreds of pages long. It's a huge amount of material to digest, and it makes major decisions for our future. And I also, like Bob, just really dislike the get rid of or keep for public purpose aspect of it. I think there should be intermediate categories where you sort of put property on the back burner for a while for future needs. One of the main issues that I disagree with is that there's no planning for the future. There's nothing here for areas for future parks, recreation, schools, and housing uses. There are things like, oh, it has potential for that, but I think we should be discussing that. We taxpayers do not want to buy property back for schools, and we can't rely on the private sector to provide things like a good mix of housing. We have to be proactive about that and put aside this property, or at least keep it for being disposed of right away. So we, like Bob said, our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren will have property to have. I also want to get into the weeds a little bit and say, I disagree with map 15, that's on page 66. I disagree with the proposal to dispose of the properties behind Woodland subdivision. These need to be retained as a noise buffer properties between the airport and the residential properties to the west. There's a real serious noise problem with the airport and the residential properties to the west, and especially in the days when there used to be, of course, a lot more trees and vegetation, and now there's a lot less, so there's a lot more noise. And if the city doesn't really have a noise mitigation plan for the airport and to separate the airport from the residential areas, and so until there's some kind of plan, which there should be these buffer lots to separate the airport and the residential lots. I guess really I was just speaking really quickly about. I hope like I said, I hope you'll postpone it again to take some more time to digest it. And I really do think you should take as much time with this plan as you do with the comprehensive plan, because it's every bit as important, and it's certainly a lot longer than the comprehensive plan and more complicated. And that took weeks and months with lots of work sessions by you guys and lots of public hearings. And I'm a little shocked that there's this sort of top-down, let's get it done in a few weeks approach. I would really like to see the administration step back and try to put this out in the public. As you know, if I could just have another minute, we don't take well in this community. I've lived here for almost 40 years, and we absolutely don't take well to the top-down approach, and that's why some of these things have been put on the ballot year after year, where comprehensive plans have been referred and voted down because you don't start with a public first. The administration comes up with these ideas, and they try to shove it down everyone's throats, including their commissions. And it should start out with some town hall meetings with the public so you can get a lot of public input. I'm sorry, but just putting a comment form on the city's website doesn't cut it. This is an enormous plan that will really affect our future, and it deserves a lot more attention than a couple of months and a rush job. So I hope you'll postpone it at least till next year, and also develop some work sessions and really invite the public. Don't just put it on your agenda, which isn't even published in the newspaper anymore. Please just, have some public reach out to the public and ask people what they think, and including, for example, the Native community. A lot of these properties have Native artifacts on them, and were used for part of the Native villages of the area. I don't know that anyone's reached out to the Native community at all. I know that I talked to the college professors at KPC, and they said they hadn't heard from anybody. So I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. I really don't think you should be approving it tonight in its current form. So thank you.
Thank you. One more.
Jim Glendenning, 694 Sycamore Circle. I from the 30,000-foot view, agree with Christine Schmidt. We need to take more time, and I believe the flavor of the council was expressed to administration that we not take any affirmative action during this holiday time. People are distracted, people are on vacation, people are not really looking at this very, very, very important decision. This is not a management plan, this is an inventory. Your activity, your response, your advice, I'm a member of the council, will inform us as to how we go forward. The idea that this is touching on the comprehensive plan is absolutely true. It's fundamental to the comprehensive plan. Look at what else we have of the moving parts of the bluff erosion. Okay, we have this consideration, and then perhaps a waterfront development plan. So all of these things is like a frog in a blender. We just need to take a deep breath. And how do you eat an elephant? Just one bite at a time. And maybe just look at the segments of this plan that have been proffered to the city. Airport, look at the airport. Harbor, they're digging in. They're looking at their waterfront. And on the city council, we totally depend on your observations and take time, ask good questions, and this plan has been in the works for over 3 years. And I don't think we should now have a rush to judgment because we have an excellent map that Mr. Greenberg helped us devise. That's just a tool to help us divine what we should be looking at. So thank you, Director Foster, for illustrating the concerns of the other commissions and committees. And this is important. There's lots of property. It's the size of Soldotna that we're looking at. And let's just take some time and work amongst ourselves. And if we need more time, more work sessions, more actions with the citizens of our community, let's take that time. Let's do that. Thank you.
Okay, you can sit right there for a second. I'll make this comment now. I'm sure Councilperson Winger will bring this back to you guys when I make this comment. But anyway, you can hear it too. I just think that I agree. We need to have some way to get the information out there to get people in here, whether it's if we do it on a Saturday or something. But it's no different than on an election night. No one complains until the day after and they didn't go vote. I think we need to get people to try to put them in here, but I guarantee you, you're going to have to do it kicking and screaming to get them here. So however the council can direct the administration to blast it on the radio or however it needs to be done, because it is a big thing, but I don't want us to just keep kicking it down and do nothing for the next 2 weeks and then nothing for the next 2 weeks. We need to do something. So, and I'll talk with Mr. Foster about that too, but I 100% agree. But it doesn't do us any good just to kick it for another meeting or another month and do nothing. So that's all I have.
Yeah,
Yep.
Just in response to your tone and tenor of your comments, we have some new members of our council. And they have concerns over just some of the approaches that we've taken. And perhaps it's just a means of expressing their concern. Maybe it's an educational opportunity, a teachable moment. I like to use that phrase. And so when these questions are asked and the flavor of the administration is expressed, and the wishes of the new members and the existing members of the council, we will provide some leadership. But as it stands now, you're tasked with looking at specific features of this, and it's a inventory. It's not a management plan. And as soon as we realize that, we can go forward. And you look at each of our commissions and committees, they're tasked with certain discrete parts of our city. And I think before you make a decision, you should take their comments, anneal them, digest them, and work it among themselves. And it may be that we'll have to have a work session with city council and planning and zoning as the primary deciders of these type of events in our city. And let's just do that. We work well together, and let's just continue to do it. And the new year will bring us good decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Dothett.
Commissioner Twait, Chair Twait, I do want to agree with you on the fact that, I mean, at some point we are going to have to take action on it, and I think we can kick the proverbial can down the street for as long as we want, and we can beg and plead for people to come in, but at some point we are going to have to set, okay, we're going to have to say something, whether we do public testimony for the next couple of months and review, and then we just, at some point we do need to make a decision on it. I agree with that. And I also agree with Mr. Denning that there's a lot of confusion on this, and I think people, I don't know if it's just because it says it's, you know, they're calling it the management plan, when really it's not. Right now, and like Mr. Ostrander said, every city-owned piece of property in the city is up for sale. You could fill out a contract and say, I want to purchase this. And they can approach it, and then it has to go to the board, and it has to be approved for purchase. This just is a tool, as an inventory, that now it brings to light that, hey, we've got one spot we can look up, and somebody could pull up and say, oh, these are actually the lots that are available in the city that the city owns. Because right now, from personal experience, when I went to look for property as a business owner in the city of Kenai, I didn't know I just started pulling up the borough website and clicking on random lots, who's got what and where, and finding out what this is. It's really an inventory, and it's not per se the dead rule that we're going to stick for sale signs up in every single city-owned lot that says dispose of in here. This is just another tool for somebody to be able to find information about it. And I think there's a lot of, so the people that are showing the most concern over this are thinking that in that aspect, I feel that it says dispose of, so they're putting a for sale sign up, they got a realtor on the street, and they're going to, as soon as we approve this plan, it's all going for sale. And I just think we need to really try to emphasize to people that that's not what this is. It's not, we're giving this to a real estate agent and saying, here, go sell all these lots right now. It's just an idea of what could be done and recommendations by a third party that could do it. We can't, even if it says dispose of in here, it still has to go before committees and the council for approval of disposal of that land before it gets sold through the application process. So I do agree that we need to do, if we want to do outreach, maybe set up one town hall meeting or something and give the opportunity. I mean, these are all public comments are available still. It's online. I do like to see that we could, before we do our final vote on what we want to do or any changes that might be amended to this, that we may be able to see what the public comments are. And at once, and maybe this is a question, when are we going to see some of these comments? Are there going to be amendments made to these? And if that's done, is there a timeline on when the amendments are going to be added to this? I don't know if there's somebody could do. Any staff?
Well, let's, you got anything, you got something you want to add to that?
Just suggesting as a timeline,
Okay.
all the commissions and committees to date have put off their final observation, shall we say. I don't know if you can say decisions, ideas anyway, that they have regarding this situation. And those aren't going to happen until January. And so that's the earliest that any comments, public or derived from commissions and committees, will be collated and presented to you. So, and your point is well taken. We have to secure some of our definitions. Dispose, that's almost like flushing a toilet, eh? And there's other I think there's other facets of that definition. If you have something for lease or something for sale or something other, and then you have to and I harp on this a little bit when we're talking about disposal of land. We have titles 21 and 22. And perhaps in the interim, please, Mr. Foster, if you could just give us Title 21, which is, I believe, is Airport 22, which is General Fund Lands. Give us an overview. You know, I couldn't sit down here and tell you exactly what it is. I know where to look at, and all of you probably have the same view of it. But give us something. Give us something to look at in code to see what we're actually discussing and how we are going to manage that. I think that would be a good start. Thank you.
Okay.
Through the chair, yeah, and so that's actually a little bit of a learning experience from providing these presentations. You know, we started with that joint, work session with council, commissions on October 11th, and then October 27th with planning and zoning. I'll just say what sort of I've learned from that process is, and especially some of the other commissions that aren't quite involved with land use and code, was to sort of explain that process of, yes, this, it's a draft land management plan, that's what it's entitled, and really some of the significant parts of that is it's this inventory, it's electronic, it's in a database, we can map with it. That alone is really huge. Historically, without this, when it comes to inquiries, whether it's an airport property or outside the airport reserve, really labor intensive, and you're kind of cherry picking, going parcel by parcel, and maybe just thinking about, oh, well, based on my knowledge of the community, here's what parcel to look at. So we have a little more sophisticated way to map and look at all of this information on the 369 parcels, but also those recommendations. And so I do think this is the time to review it, have the comments, and what I passed along to the other commissions. I've told them about that. This is a tool that staff can utilize. We're also hoping that this would actually be public fronting as well. So this might be accessible from the public via online. And that it's a tool with that information and with those recommendations on how to consider each of these properties. But when we're talking about plan, well, that goes to Title 14. All 369 of these parcels have an existing zoning, right? Like we have Title 14 that says how to handle development and land use, already. And then Title 21 for the airport reserve, that says, hey, when it comes to leases on airport land, and I know you as the commission know a lot of this, but other commissions didn't, as well as probably a lot of members of the public might not be really familiar with this. Is that the land management plan has all these other existing plans, the comprehensive plan, the airport plan, as well as these sections of code, 14 zoning, 21 airport reserve, 22 outside the airport reserve, that says, hey, here's how we do leases and land purchases and land donations and so on. And so all these, we'll be working together. And so what I put forth with the other commission, so last night with the airport commission, is with their time and their review, if they could focus on what falls in their purview, and that's the airport. And so take a look at their airport plan, their layout plan, and see how that compares to what's being proposed, information-wise and recommendation-wise. And I'd say same thing with the comprehensive plan and the Harbor Commission taking a look at harbor kind of purview parcels, parks, looking at their parks plan and trails and so on. So that's something I've learned over the last, just week or two, really. And yeah, I find it really encouraging, the interest we're getting, and that now's that opportunity to really review, comment, discuss. And I do really foresee, and it was in the original presentation, after each of the commissions, probably a lot more work sessions and inviting the public and having more conversations as needed. And I'll end on, it could be that some commissions meet in January, and they might even need a little bit more time after having a discussion of all the comments and ideas they might have. I want to just make sure folks don't feel really pressured to rush. It's an important document. It's an important tool, and we should ensure that we've taken a good look at it and feel good about what we have. I'll end it there.
All right, very good. Okay, one more.
I just thank Director Foster for bringing all our thoughts together, and I think I think in theme and theory, you have a good idea, and of course, more discussion is better. And really, nothing's gonna happen between now and New Year's. But we have time for individuals to get our comments together, and that begins the process, and thank you.
Thank you. If there's no one else that would like to speak to this, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Dothett.
I guess maybe this might be an idea to think about doing maybe a joint session with just the boards or the different commissions where they have all their different amendments they might want to present. Maybe a January timeframe, might be doing another one of those joint meetings over at the chamber again, and then we can have all the boards, if or whoever, at least a member of each commission present that might have a list of the different amendments or changes they may want to recommend. Then maybe we could all get together and put it into one spot so we know what everybody's wanting to do in one spot. Might be helpful, instead of just each individual commission meeting and then we don't know what Harbor said and Harbor doesn't know what we said, or vice versa. Might be something to think about. If everybody's waiting to meet again until January, that might be the time frame to have that joint meeting again to kind of try to track it down and finalize one more time before we have our final say on things, so we know what amendments and what changes that each commission recommended.
Mr. Foster, how do you have a count on how many people have filled out the online form?
Churchway, I don't right now. But I will. I'll touch base with Christine Cunningham on that.
Okay.
To get that total, and so that will be something I could provide at a future meeting if it is indeed postponed. I would say one other thing real quickly. You know, the intention thus far is to have each of the commissions sort of review it with their purview. Not necessarily to just be limited to it, but, you know, the airport, you know, commission, they're subject matter experts on the airport, and so it's really helpful to have them maybe focus on that with their comments. And so the idea behind each one of the commissions of drafting their own resolution, their own, you know, comments, is that those are going to be compiled and brought forth to council in future work sessions. And so I don't necessarily want the commissions to feel that, like, once you get to the point of providing some type of resolution, that, you know, that's it, that you wouldn't be, you know, able to be involved with future discussions. And it could be with that compilation, when all of the commission resolutions come to council for that consideration, that the commissions could be involved at that stage as well. So that's just another thought on sort of procedurally how it could happen.
Commissioner Greenberg.
Yeah, I'd like to sort of echo what everybody else is saying. And I've worked on a lot of plans, creating a lot of maps for a lot of plans, and usually there's a robust outreach period. You know, comprehensive plan takes a year. There's when you work on them, there's usually a definition. You know, they define you have to do 10 meetings, 10 public meetings, or something like that. You know, where you do get this input from everybody, and people don't say, "Hey, you're just trying to sneak this by." You know, you're just not going to get the buy-in unless you have input from the public. So I think we just need to have some kind of a defined period where we have comments, and so it doesn't go forever. You know, you do it from 6 months or something, and then you say at the end of that period, we've got all the comments. Everybody's had their opportunity. You know, and at the end of that, and we've had public meetings. You know, they have one at over at the Club 409 or whatever it is. You know, everybody, you know, just have a couple of public meetings at the senior center or whatever. Ask them what they think, and we do have to get into the weeds on something like this. There are individual parcels that people know things about and they want to have comments on. So how do we incorporate that to make this a better product? And I just think, you know, we just have a period that follows this for public outreach and make it defined, you know. And from that, we would have the comments and it would end, you know, with a better product. Thank you.
Did anybody tell you, by the way, that you did a great job on that?
Yeah, I did.
Commissioner Springer?
Chairman Twait, yes. I, I was looking at this recently, and personally, I'd like to see us review Title 22 and see what changes we might want to recommend to council to review it and change certain things in there. Again, I don't know what timelines we're talking about, if we can do that, you know, in January or whenever it might be, or, anyway, that was my main thought, was I think we should review it. I'm not so concerned with Title 21, because of course it's airport, and, you know, I feel like that's more airport related, and they may need to be looking at that, but from our perspective, Title 22 is kind of important to me, so.
Elaborate on it, if you will. What kind of things do you?
Well, I didn't get a chance to review it real closely. I just kind of briefly went over it, and mostly what I was looking for was the disposal of residential properties, as to what kind of requirements that the council may put on it, if there is any. I didn't necessarily see any, that there was requirements that the council would put on, but I may be wrong, and that's why I'm kind of bringing it up, as to, I think maybe we should review Title 22 just slightly to see if there's something in there that we may want to suggest changing. So, anyway, that's primarily it.
Okay, good. Commissioner Dothett?
On that, I can't remember exactly what it was, but I brought it up at the joint session, I believe, about residential lots and disposing, but some people in residential areas, these are a lot of, and it was talked about that if it was disposed of, they would require, there wasn't a timeline per se, I don't believe that came up, but it was required to build an actual residence on that lot. And that did come up as a requirement that the city would require if they sold a residential lot, that it couldn't be bought necessarily as just somebody, a neighbor buying it for having extra green space. If they sold it, the intention was that they wanted to see a residence built on it, so it would bring more people into the area, utilize more of the public services like the water and sewer and et cetera. So that was one interesting thing that came up out. I did ask that on that last meeting, on the joint session, was that there's a lot of residential lots that I didn't realize the city owned, a lot of small residential lots, and that part of that would be, they would want that actually developed, but there wasn't an exact time frame in that development process. So the green space holding of somebody purchasing a lot next door to them, just to have a bigger lot, wasn't allowed, kind of thing.
I might respond to that. From what I read in it, I didn't see that. That's so I don't know if that's in there somewhere, and I just didn't see it or what, but from what I've read, and again, I just really skimmed through it real quickly, and I didn't actually have Title 22 in front of me. I had a copy of one from several years ago, so could have been changed, and I wouldn't know it. But anyway, I didn't see it, but that's why I was wondering.
And I wasn't reading it directly from the title. That's what I was just brought up during the meeting, is how I understood it.
I think it was a verbal statement.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, and I don't know if making changes to Title 22 would affect how we would look at these properties. I mean, I don't know which one has to come first necessarily, but I mean, it's definitely a discussion. I agree. I mean, I know with unlicensed contractors, you know, if you build a house, you're not supposed to be able to sell it for 2 years, so that you can't just build one and sell it and skirt the issues. But if you lose your job, or you get a divorce, or your breadwinner dies or something, there's options. Something can happen that you have to do it. Same thing could be that if you bought this land with every intent and all of a sudden you lost your job, what are you gonna get your land taken back to? So I agree, there might be stuff we need to look at in there, but specifically, without going down Title 22, which I agree we need to definitely do, what do we want to do here? Do we want to postpone it to a time certain? Do we want to wait until, we probably want to put a date on it, don't we? We need to put it on something, we can postpone it again. But if we postpone it, can we, in the meantime, set work a work session for it or something like that, we can do that, right? We just can't have a meeting about it prior to that, or how does that work? If we want to put it back to our second meeting in January, can we get work done on it prior to that?
Sure, if you want to set a work session or a special meeting before then, you do that.
Okay, all right, so I don't know, I mean, it is, Vice Chair Fikes, your red light was on. Now it's off.
January and scheduling a work session
Can you turn
on later days. I would say tabling it until January and scheduling a work session in our lighter times in the holiday period, possibly when you have a lighter schedule. We typically tend to cancel things in the November, December range. So if there's a time slot in there that might be better for folks, even after Christmas and right before the New Year's or something, if there's a slow time or a slow period in there.
Mr. Foster, you had your hand on the button. No?
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Very quickly, and I recalled this distinction from the other night. Is it postpone? Is that what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not
I just
table.
want to.
Yep,
I just
yep.
want to make sure that.
Yep.
And then the other one, I actually don't have. Looking at the 2021 calendar, we don't have our draft, but it could be. And I'm just throwing this out there that if it was the second meeting in January to postpone, perhaps we could do a work session earlier in January. That's just either at the first meeting or separate.
Yeah, and as I said that, I was thinking if we wanted to get any feedback from the other commissions that are postponing it until January, then maybe the second meeting makes sense. To postpone it until that meeting, whatever day that is. 26th. So we could make that motion right now.
I just have one.
Commissioner Dodd, yeah, go ahead.
On that, if we postpone, we're just postponing our vote on this, but can we still have it on as a open to public comment as an agenda item for it during our other meetings? If somebody wanted to say, I want to bring it up, or would that be something that they would just need to bring up on their own
I think it
during
has to be
non-public?
advertised, right?
Yeah, so you can have another public hearing and then postpone it again until the 26th, however you want to do it. Do you want to, the next meeting for P&Z is December 8th, so you postpone it to December 8th for another public hearing and then postpone it again, like however.
Just to point out,
I guess we can. It's simple to just postpone it again.
At every
immediately.
meeting, you have unscheduled public comments, so you always have a dialogue that's open for anything kind of discussion. So there'll be many more opportunities, I truly
Yeah.
believe.
I was
The more
thinking
we
it was-
talk about it, the more we discuss it, the more it's out there in Zoom land, the
Yeah.
more folks that are gonna see it on the website. You're gonna hear feedback.
I just think if it's on the docket, it might cause people to come in to say, oh, hey, look, they're talking
Yeah,
about
I mean,
it.
it probably makes it doesn't hurt anything to do it. Why don't we just postpone it to the
We can
next
just-
meeting then?
yeah.
And then hopefully anybody that does fall on it and see it, if that's all it takes, at least we'll maybe get one person here. I was gonna recommend that Mr. Glendenning wear a sandwich board sign on Spur Highway and walk up and down to advertise, but.
Second.
There's code for those sandwich
Yes,
boards, remember?
That's true. All right, so, did someone make that motion?
I'll make a motion to postpone until December 8th. I probably need a number on that, don't I? To postpone voting on resolution PZ 2021-39, recommendation of the council of city to approve and adopt the city of Kenai Land Management Plan until December 8th.
2021.
2021.
Second. Any discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Commissioner Halsted?
Yes.
Commissioner Woodard?
Yes.
Commissioner Greenberg?
Yes.
Commissioner Dothett?
Yes.
Commissioner Springer,
Yes.
Vice Chair Fikes,
Yes.
Chair Tweet.
Yep.
Motion passes.
All right. Item G, unfinished business, H, new business, and I, pending items we have none, takes us to item J, reports. J1, City Council. Council Person Winger.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So as you can see, there's been a little bit of a changing of the guard. So I've been currently serving on Parks and Recs, and I am now your new liaison. Vice Mayor Glendenning took over Parks and Rec. So I actually sat in on my last meeting last week in that joint meeting as well when the commissioners wanted more time. So I wanted to address just a few of the comments before I gave my report. We've heard a lot of talk about quiet hour. We don't actually really have anything in our code. It is something we're enforcing on conditional use permits. It is something I've actually sat down with administration to go over. And you would think something so simple as setting a quiet hour would be simple, and it truly just is not. It is on my radar. I feel it's something that needs to be established and set forth. What we have is a nuisance. So we don't have a quiet hour, we have a nuisance law. So if you're making any noise at any point in time that your neighbor or anybody feels is a nuisance, they can complain, and it can go from there into a possible citation. So that's as far as what we have. Now, a nuisance could be somebody mowing their lawn at 1 o'clock in the afternoon that irritates your elderly neighbor, and I know this from experience. So having a little bit of guidance on quiet hours, especially to help with your conditional use permits, so it is in code and not something you're adding in as an amendment. I would like to agree with some of the public comments I heard about the land buffers behind the woodland, retaining it for buffer. That land specifically butts up to Woodland. It's at the end of Birch Street. In the 90s, Hall Quality Builder tried to develop that subdivision, and through a painful comment process for over months' time, dragging it out, there was substantial comment opposing it from both Inlet Woods, Woodland, and Birch. They ended up not granting any of it, and that project was abandoned. Now it's grown back into full wooded nature area. So there was a potential of developing this at one time, and they abandoned that because they needed it to be a buffer. Now that has kind of dropped off. So I do agree with retaining that, as I heard public comment, because we have had this situation in the 90s. I wanted to mention too, postponing it might be in some benefit. We're going to see more changes in appointments on commissions next month. So some commissions that had vacancies could see appointments. Some people can move around on commissions. So there could be new members joining or changing that might need to be filled in on these work sessions. I think you guys had a great public comment process. I think there was some great comments I heard up here. I am a note taker, so I like to take notes. I've heard a lot about Titles 21 in previous meetings, Title 22 tonight, and I would just like to say for myself, work sessions to me aren't presentations, they're going through this book. So looking at this, going, what section are we going to work on today? And I think maybe this is where the buy-in should be, is breaking this into a section of retainable lands, and we're actually working through that section. Or maybe we break this document down into zones. And then we'll get more public buy-in, we'll have a better understanding of our scope of work here. But presenting a document and giving a 300-page document and asking you to dissect it is a lot. So I would like to see work sessions where we're dissecting it by sections, and I think we'll get more valuable feedback that way. And then, so that kind of wraps up just some of my comments I wrote down. So at the last council meeting, we had quite a few public comments scheduled. We heard from the Kenai Watershed Forum. We heard from the Kenai Peninsula Homeless Coalition. We had a presentation from a member in the community on censorship. Great presentations, a lot of things happening in our community between the watershed and the Homeless Coalition. We also we established our meeting schedule for next year. We should get a final draft of that here soon. We also accepted a grant from Hillcorp, donated $2,500 for the Thanksgiving senior meals. Those will all be done via delivery. There won't be doing any in-house serving for the Thanksgiving dinner. But the generous donation's definitely gonna make that another successful meal. We also approved the execution of the lease of the airport reserve lands between Schilling's Rental. We postponed a water front development assessment study. I think a lot of our concern really falls in doing this step by step and not getting ahead of ourselves. So I think when we start talking about a water study, but we have this land management plan, I know I really want to see from a 30,000 feet what our plan is on this. We're inventory, this is a great tool, but what are we going to develop? What is our future? What are we going to do? Let's go up a 30,000 level, see what our layout is going to be, see what we want to use for our lands, and then I think this will come naturally and it will really help the study going forth. We'll have a better understanding of our direction that we want to go, where we want to see developments. I would hate to say this is what we want to do on this specific section, and then when we're done with land management, we have to backtrack because we didn't put these pieces together. So we kind of asked administration for more time. We really wanted to see where this land management landed. I know the body has asked for more time after the holidays on it, so I would foresee work sessions after the first of the year. We also got a new professional service contract with Dr. Agnes, a medical direction and oversight for our Kenai Fire Department. And we also awarded an agreement to purchase computer equipment. So that really wraps up what I have for you guys. I know everybody's tired, and I appreciate you guys being here and all your comments, and I look forward to future work sessions. And if you have any questions or comments, I'm always available for you to reach out. I will not be here. Do we have a November 24th meeting? Well, then.
You would have been here, right?
Well, I will be in Florida, so Vice Mayor Glendenning was going to fill in for me, but there's no filling in now, so I just would like to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving.
Any questions? Vice Chair Fikes.
What is the oversight with Dr. Agnes for the fire department, I think you said?
So I believe he's just on call to double check the direction on administrating medicines, any concerns that come up in procedures, practices. I believe he also, maybe Vice Mayor Glendenning might have a little bit more information on the extent of what he's overseeing. My understanding is he might be doing some medical fit with our fire department as well. So he kind of oversees their health wellness as well as administration, drugs, questions, concerns on that end.
Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much. J2 Borough Planning, Vice Chair Fikes.
Short and sweet. We had one thing on the docket. We met on Monday. We didn't have to go in person because we only had one thing on the docket. So we did a Zoom. We all Zoomed in. We got to hear about a marijuana application by a Jesse Spurgeons for a Black Alley Vapes. It was quite a ways out in the Nikiski area, kind of off the Spur Highway. Wasn't really in a heavily residential area. It met all the criteria for the state. It met all the criteria for the borough. There was no opposition. There was no objections to any of the testimony. And so we convened, discussed, and had no other plats, and that was it for the evening.
Simple. Any questions? J3 Administration, Mr. Foster.
Thank you, Chair Tway. I'll be brief. We don't have any items for the November 24th meeting. We already discussed about canceling that meeting. We don't have any items for the following meeting date, which is December 8th, though I do have two essentially discussions about potential applications, but nothing submitted and accepted at this time. And I'll leave it there.
Any questions? Regarding Title 22, when do you see a good fit for us to delve into that? Before or after we get through this land management?
Yeah. My thought was to see with the land management plan what may trigger for updating sections of code. So 21,
After then.
22.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my original
Okay.
thought on how to approach it. Really, to see how there might be further implementation of what is provided in the land management plan. That is one that's been kind of on my not necessarily to-do list, but to keep an
It's out
eye
there, huh?
to keep an eye on list. Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, any other questions for Mr. Foster? If not, we are going to move on to additional public comments.
Christine Schmidt, 513 Ash Avenue. I just wanted to say I thought the conditional use permit hearings went really well. I really liked the new format where the applicant has to be here so you can ask them questions. I think that was super helpful tonight for the first one in particular. And also I really liked how you, the other thing that we had talked about before, I'm not sure it ended up in the final ordinance change, but it had been discussed by the members of the public, was to pick up some of the things that people were promising that they would do and pick it up and put it in writing, and by amending the conditional use permit. I thought that was really good that you did that tonight, and I'd really encourage that. I think Rick Baldwin was the person that had asked for that, wanted to have that. And I hope you'll also consider moving forward with your, continuing to work on that conditional use permit ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, no informational items. We've determined our next meeting's on December 8th. Commissioners' comments and questions. Commissioner Woodard, you can go first so you can get off this phone call. Maybe she's gone. Well, you never know. It gets late early there. All right, we'll move along then. Commissioner Dothett.
I would just like to say that I really hope that the council does eventually move forward with the waterfront plan. I think that's a valuable asset that we need to have. So I think it would go well with the land use plan, knowing what somebody else would recommend and possibilities for use of lands that we own and what we could do with privately owned partnerships down there. I really hope that we do move forward with that sooner than later.
Thank you. Commissioner Halstead.
Nothing here?
Commissioner Greenberg.
I don't have it.
Commissioner Springer.
I don't have anything.
Vice Chair Fikes.
All good, Chairman Twain.
All right, I am good as well. Business completed. The meeting is adjourned.